Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the February 7th business meeting of the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners. I'll ask for County Administrator Wheeler to take the roll call.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Savas?
Here.
Commissioner Schrader?
Here.
Chair Ludlow?
Here, would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we have the approval of the order of the agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to, I realize that the agenda will probably carry on as it's laid out, but I have a urgent matter before me. I was trying to get that resolved before the meeting, so I may be forced to step out of the meeting. I hope to and plan to return. For those that are here, in the event I miss any testimony, I will watch the tape. But here in a matter of moments, I need to leave the meeting, at least to try to get this resolved. And again, I hope to be back. But I don't want to miss out on some of these very important topics we have before us, and some of the new information that's been brought forth. There's been so much new information that's been brought forth that I just got on my desk here in the last 15 minutes. So what I'm going to be stepping out has nothing to do with that, but we have, again, two heavy-duty issues here. So I would respectfully request that we take the testimony today and remove the two items, the Greenway issue due to some legal communication correspondence from an attorney's office regarding this, and I think that he probably calls for an executive session on the matter, and also some legislation that was passed yesterday that changes the complexion of the CRC. I think I want to be fully informed before we make any decision on this matter, and I think right now on both matters it may be premature. So therefore, I respectfully request that we have the discussion on those items, but not have the decision today. And our Commissioner Bernard also participated in that with all this new information that's come forth. I think we owe him that as well.
Is there a second to Mr. Savas's motion on these two items?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to remove both the green corridor question, and by the way, I would say that it's quite unusual that you have received something legally that hasn't seen my desk. Ms. Smith, have you seen anything like that? Martha, have you seen this?
What I have is a letter from Beery, Elsner, and Hammond. And just for the record, I know Jack Hammond. Oh, I have a letter here from Beery, Elsner, and Hammond. And it's questioning whether or not the hearing will result in a land use decision under state law. This is particularly important if the board decides to withdraw from one or both of IG days. If it falls within the land use realm, the county should clarify whether it considers the hearing to be a quasi-judicial in nature. So from this particular group of attorneys, they are questioning some of the legal processes here. And I can certainly have you take a look at my property,
We have that copy, I
This-
think, all of us.
Yeah.
Well, I have that too. In fact, it was on our desk as of last night, I think.
I just didn't see it last night when I left
Well-
here. So I just got this morning, and again, I think Mr. Bernard should also participate in any decision as well.
Let's let Ms. Smith finish. Do you finish with that?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean that.
Martha, did you have any other comments?
No, but this does raise concerns with me about this, that we probably should talk about it. I obviously would like to see our community planning organizations, and Boring in particular, in the city, maybe with one of the commissioners kind of working things out, but, I don't know if that's
I
possible.
would like to proceed today with the people in the crowd who are prepared to testify. I don't think that we should put off what anybody in the audience has to say on any matter. Now, if something passed yesterday in the legislature, may I remind Commissioner Savas that it may have passed out of a committee, however, it has not gone to Ways and Means for clearance, nor has it gone to the opposing House, nor has it gone to the governor's office. So when you say something has passed, it certainly hasn't been passed. It has just been moved to a different committee since it's only the second week of the legislature. And this being the important item that it is, we have a very long way to go. So I would like to continue with testimony both on the Green Corridor and the CRC, and then listen to people and be able to answer and ask questions on these matters.
Let me just make sure now, this is on, first of all, I have received advice from legal staff that the 1998 agreement can be removed, no problem. In regards to the 2011 Green Corridor Agreement, it requires, as I think everybody knows that's involved in this, a 60-day notice for the participants. So that if it is a land use matter, indeed, we're giving it plenty of vetting time with a 60-day notice, and we'll have an additional hearing on that as required. So, Mr. Savas, you had additional comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think when I was, I know we should probably vote on the motion to change
We're
the,
still
but I
having
agree with
discussion.
Commissioner Smith that we absolutely take all the have the discussion today and take the testimony. Absolutely, I agree, but we shouldn't probably get into the dialogue about this, but I just did want to point out, because I have to make the phone call now, I just got a note here.
Commissioner
My
Savas?
point is, Mr. Chair, that the resolution for the CRC says, as currently proposed, and this legislation, I've been told, changes the way it's been currently proposed. So if that's the case, the resolution is somewhat out of date.
So that's the reason for the pulling of the CRC portion versus the Green Corridor, correct?
Correct. Correct. We got two different issues here. So,
Martha?
Mr. Chair, call for the question.
Mr. Savas,
would-
can we please have further discussion?
Questions of clarification are allowed at this time. Is there any clarification of the motion made? All right, we're going to call for the question. All those in favor? Well, let's do it this way. Mary, would you call the roll, or the poll this question?
You
Thank you.
bet. Commissioner Smith?
No.
Commissioner Savas?
Yes.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Chair Ludlow?
No. So therefore, the order of agenda remains, and it doesn't pass. Now, I would like to make a motion to remove from the order of agenda the presentation on the Governor's Film Advocate Award. These are staff, and we certainly want to honor them and respect them for being recognized, but when there's a full room of citizens here, I think we want to bypass that and get back to the meat of the subject. So is there a second to that move?
I move that.
You second it? Okay.
Second it.
Roll call, please. Poll.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Chair Ludlow?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, I will try to return.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment before we continue?
Yes.
I'm very disappointed that Commissioner Savas feels that he has to leave and not listen to you people in person. We all have the same information that he does, and I don't know why he's trying to skirt the issue, but I feel that, it's respect to the people to remain and listen.
May I make a comment, Chairman?
Yes, you
Hill?
may.
We're all colleagues here, and when a colleague has other business to attend to, we should respect that. I've known Commissioner Savas for a number of years. I've worked with him on Oak Grove issues, and I believe that he has good reason, if our colleague says he does, at this point, to have additional conversations. I believe him when he says that when he's not here, he will listen to the tapes, and he will do everything he can to return in a timely manner. Thanks.
Thank you both. Yes, certainly any commissioner has the right to leave a commission meeting and/or not attend it because of other business.
It's one of the reasons, I'm sorry, Chair Ludlow, for interrupting, that we went to 5 commissioners so we could have a quorum when other commissioners had to be gone on business. So,
Well, it does, for the public, please understand that this commission, even with 4 people here, cannot transact business unless we get 3 positive votes. So there isn't a 2-to-1 vote that would accomplish anything on this commission. That's state law. So, getting to the discussion item, and this this discussion item. The first one is a resolution withdrawing from the, Mary, are you going to read this? Do you normally read this?
Yeah.
There you go. The discussion item is a resolution withdrawing from the intergovernmental agreement on the Green Corridor and Rural Reserve and population coordination among Clackamas County, the City of Sandy, Metro, and the Oregon Department of Transportation, and approval to initiate the termination of the 2011 intergovernmental agreement regarding Highway 26 corridor among Clackamas County, the City of Sandy, and Metro. And Dan Chandler from the County Administration will address this. So I call Mr. Chandler forward. Please understand, by the way, while that screen is down, you will not be able to view that back TV. It's just a functional thing we're trying to get corrected, but we'll be using this possibly several times, and so you will not be able to view the TV screen in the back. Mr. Chandler.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'll wait for the
Projector to power
projector to
up.
power up. That's what I'm trying to say. While I'm waiting, we're here to discuss the status of two intergovernmental agreements with Metro and the City of Sandy. Both of them have been deemed Green Corridor agreements. We're going to talk about the 1998 Green Corridor Agreement and the 2011 Green Corridor Agreement. I have a very brief presentation because I know folks want to talk about this. The Commission has discussed this previously in a study session. I want to catch my breath for a second. The 1998 agreement was entered into between Sandy, Metro, and Clackamas County. It applied to a large, I can wait.
Dan, I made a mistake. See, I'm free to admit that I do make mistakes, and my mistake was not to putting a check mark next to citizen communication. So I apologize, but I'd like to make sure we get that in, and that we have, about 6 of these. So again, I apologize. I think I'd rather make sure that happens in a timely manner. So again, citizens communication, this is an opportunity to be heard by the commission. Do know, regardless of what you say, whether you agree with the commission or not, we do appreciate you spending your valuable and saved time here to talk to the commission. I will call them up in the order that I believe that Mary received them. The first person I'd like to call forward is Mr. Will Vinton. And please come up, the next person would be Eric Lovell. Eric Lovell.
Stop.
Let's raise the screen.
I'm going to
Yeah.
raise the screen so they can watch.
Yeah, that'd be great. Either one of you. Mr. Vinton?
Thank you. See, I'm Will Vinton. I'm a resident of River Forest Road in Oak Grove. A while back, I spoke here about how our company, Will Vinton Studios, was unable to relocate to the Oak Grove area, really because of a lack of mass transit available to our employees. That company, which is now called Leica Entertainment, did finally relocate to Hillsborough at the end of the Max line there. Leica continues to grow with hundreds of excellent paying jobs, regularly turning out animated movies, including the currently Academy Award winning or nominated feature film Paranorman. Since I spoke here last, light rail has been a very heated topic, and I've had a number of interesting conversations with businessmen and women, especially in the high-tech area. What is completely clear is that light rail is absolutely essential to high-tech industries. The young, well-paid professionals in these industries demand access to good mass transit. One of my high-tech colleagues called it a threshold requirement, meaning that they can't even consider locating in an area without good mass transit nearby. So regardless of what other attributes an area may have that could attract these kinds of businesses, the area is that area is immediately crossed off the list, if you will, for possible locations based solely on its lack of max lines. So many of us, as businessmen, have therefore been very excited that Max is coming south to Milwaukee and to Oak Grove area. Now, as I understand it, despite enormous financial support from the federal government, despite the project being half completed, and despite the deep financial commitments made by Clackamas County, we're faced with a discussion about trying to stop this speeding train, if you will. To me, this is a disastrous initiative, one which only destroys what opportunity light rail represents to many of us in the business community, but it also does so with the project half completed, wasting unbelievable resources. You have, I believe, no idea how much time, opportunity, and millions you will waste in legal issues alone if you should proceed with this initiative. This is time, opportunity, and money that you could otherwise be spent on productive and badly needed initiatives for Clackamas County. So just bringing up this initiative as a possibility is a huge sign to the business communities that Clackamas County won't honor its commitments, that it makes irresponsible fiscal decisions, and that it is simply not open for business. Please, let's move forward.
Mr. Vinton, may I ask you what initiative you're speaking of there?
I'm under the impression that the board has explored or is moving towards exploring, trying to stop the light rail from proceeding to Park Station in Oak Grove.
The commission voted on at a work session earlier this week, 4-0, I might add, to send a simple letter to TriMet, asking them to consider scaling it back to Tacoma. There's no legal ramifications in that. There's no additional monies expended. The only initiative we've taken beyond that is to send, as prescribed by 3-401, questions to the voters, and that comes from our legal staff that we should proceed to do that. So there's no effect of that letter, just as a request, and I think it'll be viewed by TriMet as the same.
With respect, what would be the purpose of the letter if it weren't to, in fact, stop light rail?
Well, if we wanted to stop light rail, sir, we would put a stop work order on that. We did not. Martha?
Yeah, I have an interesting question about the jobs issue. Had you stayed in the area, how much, could you give me a ballpark about what the economic benefit would have been in terms of,
For a company like mine or
for your
the
company and for the county in terms of jobs and money actually brought to the county with
When-
folks as an economic driver?
Well, when our company was unable to relocate, it amounted to we were at probably 350 employees or so, very well-paid employees. The company Leica that I refer to, which is that subsequent company now in Hillsborough at the end of the line there, is, I think, upwards to 650, 700 employees. But more, I would say more significantly, the high-tech industry I'm referring to is the future of industry. So much in the state of Oregon for sure. And hopefully, I'd like to see that happen in Clackamas County, but it can't happen without really good mass transit.
We've got
infrastructure.
to get rolling here. I'm sorry. Is there another question?
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
do have.
Yes.
I do have another question. Well, actually, I do have a statement, Chair Ludlow, and that is that the letter that was written made it clear that it was going to be cordial, and it will help clarify our contractual obligations. However, I remain concerned that we did not follow appropriate public process because it was a very spur-of-the-moment decision without any notice and any opportunity prior to the meeting to really flesh out a letter. And normatively, the county should not be doing business that way. I think we do have new folks on board, and we have to get our processes down. But I think I'm very worried about how it didn't really follow, in my mind, and I'm getting training on this as well, the normative public notice process. So I just wanted to make that statement, and thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, sir, yes. Eric.
Hi, my name is Eric Lovell. I'm a county resident, and I founded a manufacturing business just over 40 years ago that I still run and now employs about 45 people. My credo in business is to play by the rules, to deliver more than promised, and to fulfill the many obligations I've made. When I sell my products, I insist that my customers are more than satisfied, and I expect them to pay my bill. When I sign contracts, I expect to fulfill them, and I expect others to do the same in return. Because of this credo, I and my company have earned the respect, credibility, and trust of my employees, vendors, and my customers. They all know they can rely on me to say what I'm going to do, and to do what I say I'm going to do, and even occasionally, if I have to fulfill an obligation that turned out not to be in my best interest, they know I will do it. As a citizen and as a business owner, I believe governments at all levels should follow the same credo. It's one thing to legislate a change in the rules and then proceed from that point forward based on the directives of those new rules. But new rules should not penalize individuals or organizations for activities or events that occurred legally previously. In business and in government, one of the quickest ways to get a lawsuit launched against oneself is to breach a contract. This is a feared and appropriate arrangement and serves to provide predictability and confidence needed for healthy commerce. For example, as a mortgagee, I'm not allowed to belatedly abandon my payments if my property later becomes dissatisfactory to me. Or once approved for a building or occupancy permit, I fully expect not to have the permit revoked once property is purchased or construction is underway. There are endless examples available of specific breaches that can result in expensive lawsuits from those who have been economically damaged. A breach of contract with TriMet and with the expectations of developers and county residents as currently being discussed by this board for PMLR is a real doozy with no end of potentially injured parties sure to line up in court to take a pound of flesh out of my county's coffers. Even attempting to renege on previous commitments to PMLR is sure to negatively affect employers and developers who are considering locations in Clackamas County. If the county commissioners were to retroactively change previous commitments once, what would keep them from doing it any time in the future? I am here to ask the county commissioners to reverse their ill-considered efforts to retroactively stop PMLR. As a citizen and as a business person, I prefer that you use my county resources on debating and considering future projects and activities, not on revisiting the past. I request that the commissioners embrace and support the PMLR project and help lead it to the most successful possible outcome, one we can all be proud of, whether or not you agree in theory with the form of transportation. Support it instead because it is a county commitment, because it is some 35% complete, and likely over 75% of the costs have been spent or contracted for already, and to avoid ensnaring our county in years of lawsuits from impacted parties. Please don't follow the laughable lead of a certain water district board in our own county who wasted millions of taxpayer dollars on legal fees instead of focusing on governing. I ask each of you to pretend that the inevitable legal fees resulting from a county about-face on PMLR are your own personal money, in which case I know you'd spend it cautiously. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate you coming forward. Now, folks, we're going to have to really tighten this testimony to as close as 3 minutes as we can. Normally, if you've ever watched our meetings, I'm very loose about that. Mr. Kevin Johnson and Jim Myers, please.
Kevin Johnson, Gladstone. I agree with Commissioner Smith. I wish Paul Savas was still here because some of these comments pertain to him. I was unable to attend last week's meeting but watched the video. Imagine my surprise when I heard some of the commissioners worried about taxpayer money. These comments were made while discussing a letter to TriMet and possible repercussions. Until there's a full outside counsel examination of the documents, you really have no idea what those could be. That examination needs to take place. The letter sent to TriMet may have been a first step, and it probably should have taken place right after the September election. But the real surprise that the commissioners that said they were worried about taxpayer money just the week before approved a $21 million loan for a highly suspect project, Easton Ridge. As I said 2 weeks ago, this needs to be stopped until you have all the facts. I believe the plan that was presented is full of errors and false information. Did you know the total cost will be $42 million? I couldn't get that answer at the hearing, but that is what is reported in the Oregonian. If you use the $42 million instead of the $26 million that Housing Authority used in a chart they supplied, it is actually cheaper to build new. County taxpayers will now own a $42 million property that is worth about $20 million. The 30-year replacement reserve that is supposed to pay for bathroom remodels is $2.25 million in the red after the end of 30 years. These are just two examples of a flawed staff report. Who allowed such a deceptive package to be presented? The problem goes all the way to the top. We know who the commissioners are who passed it. I understand there is a lot to cover, and HACC staff seem to make it intentionally confusing. They make it worse when they have a self-made emergency. All of that is still no excuse. I've been told that in 2008, HACC got an offer of $21 million to purchase Easton Ridge. That is 3 years after the serious moisture issue was supposedly discovered. The county could have paid off the outstanding loan, banked $12 million, and been out of this mess. Who is responsible for this? The same people that drafted and submitted the report on the current project that was approved. They can't be trusted. Do you realize 2 weeks ago you gave more to this project than the last cast of commissioners gave to Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail? There will be other votes to see if you can back up your lip service and actually save taxpayer money. Let's start now. Let's have a motion and a vote to halt this project until you have all the correct information. It's not too late.
Chair,
Yes.
can I ask some questions of Mr. Madcore at this point? Could you help clarify what the contractual agreement was for us to move forward with the affordable housing? It was 264 units, and there were close to 1,000 people, I think, or probably about 1,000 people who need affordable housing, and I'm not sure some of this information is quite correct. Can you help clarify what the contractual issues are in order to make this facility up to snuff for folks?
The Easton Ridge
Yes.
contractual issues is what you're asking about?
Yeah,
Well,
that's what I'm
I
asking.
would think someone from the Housing Authority would be probably better versed in
Okay,
that,
is
quite
there
frankly.
somebody, and we don't have to do it immediately, but can we have somebody from the Housing Authority address
Cindy
this?
Becker's here.
She is here? Is Cindy here? Hi, Cindy, how are you? So, Chair, I guess my question is, do we want to have Cindy talk about this or go on to the next?
I would not.
Okay.
And here's the reason why. I want Cindy to address this, and Mr. Johnson, if you could show up again, that'd be great. But I want her to be prepared, and I'm sure Cindy's always prepared. But again, we have a very heavy agenda here, and other people wanted to talk. And if we took the time to pull a staff member for every one of these people that testify, we'd just never get done with our agenda. So
Well, I know, Chair Ludlow, but this is about accountability and transparency, and that's what I think we need to address, and I think we need to take as long as it takes to make sure that appropriate and true information gets out to the public. It's our job.
So what we're going to see now is a staff member come up here and give a report. And then there's going to be more questions to that staff member. And if you agree that that's accountability and transparency, that's fine. But it is unscheduled, and I just want to make a note of that. So, Cindy, well, I guess, Jim, could you take a seat right there for just a second?
She can sit right next to
Oh,
me.
wait a minute.
Yeah, she can-
Excuse me. Go ahead and stay there. Cindy can sit next to Mr. Chandler. I apologize. Thank you.
Okay.
So your question for her, Martha, is what?
I want to talk about the actual, the contract and the number of folks we're serving and what the real construct is of that contract. If you could just review it quickly. I just want to make sure that correct information is available to the public.
Thank you, Commissioners. For the record, Cindy Becker, Director of, Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services. As you know, I don't have the documents, so this is going to be from my memory, but I think there's some really important points. There are two bonds. They are revenue bonds, and the revenue bonds will be paid back through the rents paid by the individuals living in Easton Ridge. The payback is not by county general funds, state funds, or federal funds. Those loans, one is a bridge loan that will be paid back through the low-income housing tax credit, and the rest of the money will be paid back over the 30 years through the rent stream that we get from Easton Ridge. The project, Eastern Ridge Project, has 264 units. They serve a variety of families, single head of household families. So I can't tell you exactly the number of people there, but it is way more than the 264 individuals. So this project doesn't compare to light rail because the funding source, as I said, it's a revenue stream that has been very consistent. We have typically had a 90% and above filled units, so it's been a project that has had a very consistent cash flow, and that is in fact the basis for the bonds.
So it really doesn't affect our general fund.
It does not.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Chair Ludlow. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Martha.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson, I know you want to say something. So I'm going to, I'll ask you to hold
Move
back
on
on that.
with the
Thank you
program.
so
I'll be
much.
back at another day.
I know you will. Mr. Jim Myers.
Thank you very much. My name is Jim Myers. I'm a resident of Clackamas County. I'm here representing myself, not the Oregon Military Department, so let's not confuse that. I viewed last week's video and was shocked to see the way the meeting was conducted, because it was totally different than it has been in the past. And I would like to compliment the chair and the new board members on their decorum and the way that they handled the meeting. There are many critical issues that we in the county are concerned about. There are many issues that we feel as citizens, and not just citizens, but taxpayers, the ones who pay the bills, your employer, impact us. And in the past, we have felt as second-class citizens with things forced down our throats. So I applaud your openness, and I look forward to your successes. And that's all I have to say. I'll yield my time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
With that, we're not going to take any more testimony. We're going to end on a lovely note. All right, fine.
Let's be positive.
Jeff Molinari and Nancy Hall, please. And then Les Poole, batting cleanup, as we would say.
Okay, mine was short. Nancy Hall, Happy Valley. I want to thank all of the commissioners who voted to send the letter to TriMet. I especially applaud Chair John Ludlow for bringing it to the forefront, and also Commissioner Tootie Smith for her staunch support. It's wonderful to experience politicians standing behind their word after being elected. I sincerely hope that TriMet will halt its operations at the county line and wait for the outcome of the vote in May. I think it's clear that we citizens of Clackamas County don't appreciate a preemptive strike before a vote. Last week, it was suggested that the commissioners seek outside counsel to give a legal review of what options and what actions could be available regarding Milwaukee Light Rail. I strongly support that idea and would like to see the legal review as soon as possible. Lastly, the trolley trail. The commissioners and staff are going to be working on the wording for the ballot title regarding the trolley trail. Instead of simply referring to it as the trolley trail, I strongly urge that in the title, the words Trolley Trail Park be used, because it's important for the public to know that this is a bona fide park being sacrificed to TriMet. That's all I have today. Thank you.
Good comment.
Thank you very much. Jeff?
Well, good morning. Now, I'm here to talk about light rail as well. You know, last month I sent you guys a letter along with some comparisons, you know, comparing New York City with our area in the population and whatnot. I just want to touch on that some more. Now, City of New York has a population of 8.1 million people, sitting on 23 square miles of land. There, the subway system works. People there, many people in New York City have driver's licenses. They use for ID. They don't own a car just because you imagine that many people, that many cars on 23 square miles of land. Now, compare that with Sauvie Island. Imagine New York City sitting on Sauvie Island, 32.75 square miles of land. The Portland metro area is so spread out that the only thing that makes sense are buses. The state of Oregon's population, the entire state of Oregon, 3,500,000. It's gone down because of the economy. Portland metro area is less than 1 million. This is according to the state's website. So what we're looking at with light rail continuing on is a bankrupt county, a bankrupt state, an economy still in the toilet. Nothing changing. Yeah, we've also had previous commissioners that, push this stuff, without any, going against what the people said. Thank God we've got a new set of commissioners and whatnot. One of them recently got a job with Oregon Iron Works. So obviously, as a corporate attorney with a title of vice president. So obviously, when she was on the board and voting, she didn't care about the citizens of Clackamas County. So if you were to, if light rail was to threaten the county with a lawsuit, in attempts to stop the project at Tacoma Street or wherever, I wouldn't mind seeing the county do, threaten them right back with an audit of all the transactions over the past 10 or so years involving, backdoor, money changing, that sort of thing. I'm sure there'd be some indictments handed down. That's all I've got to say.
Perfect timing. Thank you. Thank you both.
And Chair Ludlow, may I
Yes.
ask a process question? So this is citizen communication, but we're keeping the other numerous blue cards for the discussion.
2 other discussion items, that's right.
All
No,
right,
these
okay,
aren't
I got it.
public ones.
That's what
Yeah,
I
these
thought.
aren't specific
Okay,
discussion
I
items.
just wanted to clarify that for folks.
Mariana Moore and Les Poole. Yeah, these are,
Okay.
Mary did a good job.
Okay, good. I just wanted to clarify.
Good morning, Les Poole, Gladstone. I do appreciate the leniency that has been provided with the clock, and certainly understand that when you've got a room full of people, we have to watch the time. So I should be done in about 20 to 25 minutes. I'd like to start by saying I made a public records request recently, and I did it to find out something I already knew. Mr. Molinari just made a comment, and the reason I made the request is that the residents and property owners and business owners in the Park Avenue neighborhood were left out of the loop when this decision was made. And over in these meetings on camera, I have commented about the simple fact that light rail was going to come to Milwaukee and terminate in Milwaukee, which I'm not here to endorse. It was just a simple reality. No one wants the parking, the crime, and the end of the line. So here we were in 2003 with a $900 million line. TriMet already had done the impact statement, and they were already contracting and buying property. I wish Commissioner Bernard was here. He was the mayor of Milwaukee at the time, and he could certainly validate that he and others, late in the process, decided to hijack the end of the line and the unwanted parking and extend the line across Kellogg Lake and put it on property that turned out to be a donated deeded park. When that blew up, there was nowhere to go with the end of the line except further south. So if you look in 2007, what you'll see is a dotted line that I've often described across Kellogg Lake up to Park Avenue at a cost of roughly $150 million. And in 2008, when this line was approved, it clearly said, TriMet, if you can't build the parking structures, if you can't build what was required, what you promised, and what the authorization was for, then you have to build a shorter line. Now, the rub is, of course, TriMet would consider going back to Lake Road, getting out of our park, which, in my opinion, are basically trying to take over the park because they can't afford to extend the end of the line in an appropriate manner. I was here Tuesday. I listened to the work session. I heard words that I've been talking about for years, such as an approval for de minimis impacts in January of 2010. Obviously, if anyone wants to drive by that 4F public resource that is the trolley trail, one will find that TriMet is completely, legally in an indefensible position there. I'll wrap up in about 30 seconds if I could. Very briefly, I need to say this one more time. TriMet has not acted in good faith. TriMet has no intention of bringing Intel or any high tech to Oak Grove. And anyone that believes TriMet has any credibility in this process and that the county is out of line needs to give me a phone call, and I'd be happy to talk with them.
Wrap it up. I mean, I've told everybody, thank you, sir. Mariana Moore.
Yes, Mariana Moore from Gladstone. I was just, when Mr. Johnson spoke, and I was thinking about what we've been asking for to have the chairman of departments here, and you've kind of said, no, they're not coming, but when you know a certain things on the agenda, it would be nice to have them. And particularly since the Trell Anderson, I believe, was director of housing, and he's put in his resignation until the end of the month. And I thought, boy, we could have him here, and we would have some questions that maybe he could have answered to how we got into that mess and how nothing was being taken care of all of those years. And he should be on the line, I would think, to...
His boss was here. Cindy is his boss, so you know that, don't you?
But he was she's over a lot of things, though. And he
Pretty
was
knowledgeable, too. You go
Yes.
ahead, Mariana, but
Yeah, okay.
That's his boss. That's
So-
as high as we can go.
I don't know, but I know he was director of housing. The housing part is the way it's been advertised anyway, that I think he should have, if he didn't have, he must have had some control over some of these things. And the numbers just don't add up for what's going into that and has gone into that from the very beginning. So, but then, of course, today we're talking more about light rail, and I have company at my house today that I was showing them the pictures when we took of all the trees and how beautiful it was and what they've done now. And you show it to anybody from anywhere, because they're from Alaska, and they have property in Washington State too, and nobody can believe what has happened there. I just want to encourage everybody to go and look at it and say they don't support getting out of there. I don't know how anybody could think that that was a proper project in any sense of the word. And if it can be restored without the light rail, it would be such an asset for the city and the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mariana. There is one last card, and that's Mr. Mac Woods.
Good morning, Clackamas County Commissioners. I had not intended to speak, but I changed my mind. Hearing some of the testimony, I'm Mac Woods from Canby, retired sailor after over 20 years. Good to see new things come about. Thinking backwards reminds me of an old thought. About the time we think we're going to make ends meet, somebody moves the ends. That's happening, seems like. I particularly wanted to comment. Last week I commented less than 3 minutes quickly. Now I have a couple questions. One of them was for Mr. Bernard. I wish he was here. The question or comment I made is that anyone connected with the light rail in a money matter financially that's voting on light rail should simply recluse himself or herself, that might be proper, on the vote concerning light rail. Now my question is, can someone go right next door to the Clackamas County Tax Assessor's Office to find out what properties Mr. Bernard owns legally in his name? It happens to be, I'm a realtor, as you are too, Mr. Chairman, to know how easy it is to get a copy of public records free. Mr. Bernard owns 6 of the 8 lots that the light rail is going right very close to. You can see if you can zero in on this map, and we need to know what's going on. Yes, Mr. Madcore, I brought that to your attention. You're the legal authority. I'm not even a day at college. Could you make that happen, please? Us voters, taxpayers, needs to know the truth. That's what we learned in the military. Truth, authenticity, freedom, protecting our rights. We expect that from you. 57 seconds. Martha, you had a comment about me personally last time. I'd be happy to talk to you personally, but I'm not interested in your personal life. What I am interested in is what you're doing for the public.
That's
as
good, Matt.
representing us, your history. I understand you were a commissioner before, right here. Then somehow you went to Salem. Now you're back here. We need to know what your intentions are and plans for us voters. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a point of order. Yes, Mr. Woods, I was a commissioner for 6 years and chair twice. And I was a state senator in Salem where I chaired the Veterans Committee. And during that time, we passed the largest body of legislation that was pro-veteran in the history of this state. And I'm very proud of that because I know you're a veteran too. And then I left the Senate, and now I am back here on the commission, happy to serve you, and I'm always glad when you come.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer.
Mr. Woods.
And could somebody please check out the authenticity on whether or not, it's a legal question for you, Mr. Matcourt, whether or not Mr. Bernard should recluse him for the vote on anything financially related to all the properties he owns on Block 37 Milwaukee, light rail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. I'm not going to have Mr. Madcore answer. I believe you've approached the state on this matter, and that'll do for us, I think.
Can you do it? You're a realtor.
It is, like you say, I'm privy to plat maps, and I think I'll leave it like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that is the end of citizens' concerns, and I interrupted Mr. Chandler. Please accept my apologies.
Allowed me to catch my breath after I ran across the building.
It's too late to get here.
While the projector is powering up, we're here to talk about 2 intergovernmental agreements between Clackamas County Metro and the City of Sandy. Both of those agreements have been deemed Green Corridor Agreements. We're going to talk about the 1998 Green Corridor Agreement and what's been called the 2011 Green Corridor Agreement. I have a very brief presentation. We'll talk very quickly about what the 2 agreements say. We'll look at some maps, and then we can certainly open it up for public testimony.
I think.
The 1998 agreement that's before you today is between Sandy Metro and Clackamas County. It came out of a Green Corridor program and an earlier Urban Reserves program in the 90s. Briefly, the agreement, it covers, I'll show you a map in a moment, it covered a large area of Clackamas County along Highway 26 between the City of Sandy and the urban growth boundary there in Gresham. The agreement contained a number of provisions. It precluded upzones. By upzones, I mean zone changes that would allow uses of a higher intensity than those currently on the property. And it required the county to begin a program of visual screening along Highway 26 that would apply to existing development and future development. It had generally defined a buffer corridor area as 200 feet along either side of Highway 26 between the urban growth boundary and the city of Sandy. The agreement in 1998 was not signed by the Oregon Department of Transportation, although they were a party and were mentioned a number of times in the agreement. That has raised in some folks' minds the question of whether the agreement was valid at all to begin with, and the agreement provides that it can be terminated upon 60 days' notice. What you see here is a map of the area covered by the agreement. It's outlined there between Gresham and Sandy. You can see that it covers a fairly broad area of the county. In 2000, I believe, beginning in 2007 with the passage of Senate Bill 2011, the metro area started on a process to designate urban and rural reserves. The statute said that a county and metro could designate urban reserves, but to do that, they also had to designate rural reserves. So it had to be a coordinated program with both of those elements. And what it effectively accomplished was, rather than have the system where we looked at soil types, and the lowest soil types had to come into the urban growth boundary before anything else, we decided, well, let's go ahead and take a 50-year horizon and come up with an area of land from which we can choose to amend the urban growth boundary for the next 50 years. The status of that is that it's currently under review at the Court of Appeals. There were approximately 200,000 acres of rural reserves and I think around 20,000 urban reserves designated around the region. We expect a decision, it's anyone's guess, but we're guessing it will be early April. During that reserves process, both the City of Sandy and the Boring CPO were involved. And ultimately, the area shown here in the, I don't know what color that would be, a light brown or a dark green, urban reserve areas 1A and 1B were designated as an urban reserve. And what you see there in the lighter green was designated as a rural reserve. And during that process, the City of Sandy opposed the urban reserves designation, arguing that it was inconsistent with the 1998 agreement. So during that process, we sat down to negotiate some changes or a new agreement to resolve the city's concerns with the 98 agreement. That led to what we're calling the 2011 agreement. That agreement is not effective until acknowledgement of the urban rural reserves. So it's sort of hanging fire, I suppose. It's been fully executed by all the parties, but it doesn't become legally effective unless and until the reserves are acknowledged. The agreement says that the parties will strive to ensure that concept plans will provide a 50-foot visual buffer in the urban reserve area. And the context for that is, under Metro's rules, before anything gets urbanized, it has to come into the urban growth boundary. And before that happens now, all of the affected governments need to adopt what's called a concept plan. And the concept plan deals with utilities, governance, and all those issues. And the concept planning requirement also, the concept planning code, Metro Title 11, requires that areas to be urbanized be annexed to cities. So what the agreement provides is that in the urban reserve area, which runs generally from the urban growth boundary down to Highway 212, that we will strive to ensure that whatever city ultimately annexes that area will have a concept plan that will call for a 50-foot buffer along Highway 26. So that affects approximately 20-some properties. I guess I should hold, or we're lacking a quorum at the moment.
I think we lost our quorum.
Well, now.
She said she'd be right back.
Can we just hit pause for a moment?
Yes.
She said she'd be right back.
Well, we thought you were so important, we stopped what we were doing until you returned.
No, I'm not that important.
Yes, you are. Mr. Chandler.
Thank you. So where I was that the agreement requires or requests that whatever city ultimately annexes the area and urbanizes it, we will strive to ensure that they require a 50-foot buffer along Highway 26 in that urban reserve area. That affects approximately 24 or 25 property owners. The termination of the 2011 agreement requires a written explanation and consultation with the other parties. The agreement doesn't define what consultation means. I think if the board moves forward to terminate, we would direct staff then to provide the written explanation and initiate consultation. We would also have to figure out what consultation means, I suppose, while we initiate it. The 1998 agreement is still in effect. It can be terminated on 60 days' notice without any consultation or explanation. The parties have contemplated that once the 2011 agreement becomes effective, if it does, that we would all then jointly terminate the 1998 agreement as being superseded. Options for the BCC on the 1998 agreement, we can terminate it now. We could wait for acknowledgement of the urban and rural reserves and the effective date of the 2011 agreement. I see the typo there. That should say 2011. It says 2001. As to the 2011 agreement, the board could initiate the process, direct staff to initiate the process to terminate.
It says 2001, I believe, on the screen.
It does, and it says it on the screen as well, and that is a typo.
Okay, thank you.
It should say 2011. We can wait for acknowledgement of the urban and rural reserves and see what the Court of Appeals does before deciding what we're going to do. The county could also direct staff to initiate a renegotiation of the agreement in consultation with the affected property owners, Metro, and the city of Sandy. So those three options are available to the board, and that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. We are going to go immediately to the testimony cards, and I'll call up people two at a time. Mr. Roger Fantz, Mr. Stephen Bates.
So, am I first? Roger Vance?
Or whoever would like to go first.
Yeah. Well, I wrote down the green corridor on my card.
Yes,
and this is actually my first time speaking before the commission. Although
Good for you.
No worries.
Has been interesting listening to the input prior to this, and the complexity of the commissioner's job is pretty obvious because we have people speaking to both sides of most of the issues. I think that one of the things that sort of ties into the green corridor is somebody is very concerned about light rail cutting down trees, and that same, not saying the person feels the same way, but could also be opposed to a green corridor that keeps trees, because both have some metro area cooperation in developing a plan that works for the whole area. I'm a rural resident of Clackamas County, and I was aware of the green corridor. I wasn't aware of the large rural designation that is outlined on the map, and I'm not sure what restrictions on, say, Orient Drive there are, if there are any restrictions based on this other than it's a rural designation. That'd be a question. But generally, I'm in favor of the corridor along 26. It helps the environment. There are many people that come to Clackamas County for recreation, and I don't think they would nearly enjoy driving a road like 82nd or Burnside compared to the rural setting. Also, it's a major transportation direction, and it could complicate things with more visual distraction for the drivers. I know there'll be a diverse opinion on this. Even some people I know, I think, might be in favor of moving it, but for different reasons. I also know that people on the commission were sort of concerned about Portland creep, and I think this is a situation where to keep different communities separate, it is important to have a barrier between them. I don't want to see a Gresham to Sandy business mall, our area. So that's basically what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming today. By the way, after Mr. Bates, on deck will be Mr. David Doman and Jan Smith. Mr. Bates.
Thank you, Commissioners, for entertaining this issue today. In reference to Commissioner Savis's comment about a legal issue concerning the withdrawal of these agreements being a land use issue, I wish to advise the county that they advised the Boring CPO last May that this was not a land use issue, because if it had been, the county itself would have been in violation of ORS 215.503, which requires proper notice of property owners when an issue concerning their property is being discussed. The county made that position known last May, saying that they were not guilty of ORS 215.503. So the land use issue should be a moot point. Please be advised that the Boring Community Planning Organization has a set of bylaws. The bylaws read, "We are to protect the character of the area by maintaining a vigilant posture to sustain a safe, healthful, and pleasant quality of life while balancing the individual rights of property owners. We are to take such action as necessary by speaking out as a nonpartisan group in support of these goals." We are here today, I am here today representing the Boring Community Planning Organization, speaking out for the rights of your constituents in the Boring area. Many believe these agreements take private property by prohibiting any use other than providing aesthetics. The written word states the parties intend that urban development along Highway 26 corridor shall be screened from the highway. In addition, it is believed by many that these agreements reassign the constitutional rights of your constituents to other jurisdictions without due representation. Both issues are subrogation of the rights of your constituents. Pragmatism would have one look at the written word of these agreements. Pragmatism would have one understand that adjudication of any agreement can only be accomplished by interpretation of the written word. It has been stated that these agreements are recommendations to a future city. The written word of the Highway 26 Green Corridor agreements do not reference a future city. The written word defines city as the city of Sandy. The myth of a future city is just that. These agreements do not reference Metro Title 11. They do not reference Clackamas County policy or ORS 195. The future city argument cannot be defended by the written word. It has been stated that these agreements only apply to the Clackamas urban reserves. According to the written word, Section 3 of the 2011 agreement, it's easily interpreted that the City of Sandy and Clackamas County will work together to establish buffers in the Highway 26 corridor, which is defined in Section 2, definitions as the area along Highway 26 between the cities of Gresham and the City of Sandy. Because the written word defines city as the City of Sandy, there is no way that, Section 3 is entitled Pre-Development Buffering, which basically says that the city and the county will try to arrange for buffering, and I'm running out of time.
You have run out of
Yeah.
time, Mr. Bates.
Okay, well,
Hold
in
on,
conclusion,
hold on, Martha.
please consider withdrawing from these agreements because the constitutional rights of many of your constituents are being violated.
Stay right there. Martha?
Yeah, Steve, nice to see you the other night. I'm sorry I had to leave a little early. I just wanted to ask you a question, because my impression of the Boring CPO, I'm out there all the time, is that folks do want to keep it somewhat rural. I mean, you've done a trailhead. You're one of our bigger
yeah.
rural centers.
We have
so-
nothing against a green corridor. We have everything against taking property from people without paying them for it.
Okay, so that's the issue.
The
Okay.
issue is property rights.
Okay, because it seems to me, being out there, that people, I look at it and I've never thought it was a bad idea, but I've also lived in unincorporated Clackamas County most of my life. I don't anymore. And I do understand that we are agents of our community planning organizations. And I do want to point out that the issues that you face with Sandy, and I know we have our mayor in the audience, and hi, Mayor, how are you? This plays off across the county, actually, where the cities, Beaver Creek has always had some issues with Oregon City. Canby has had issues with their Canby CPO. Boring and Sandy have kind of always had this love-hate relationship going on. So this is really, to put it in context, a bigger issue of how our community planning organizations interface with the county and the cities. And I'm hopeful that we can work through this together. But it's not just Loring is a rural center. It's Beaver Creek is a rural center. It's Colton is a rural center. This is pretty much constant across the county. So put it in the larger context that it's kind of like Groundhog Day, pretty consistently, where we as the commissioners are trying to broker, understandings between municipalities and our community planning organizations. So,
Bear in mind,
yeah.
the Boring Community Planning Organization was not advised by the City of Sandy, Metro, or Clackamas County that they were making this 2011 agreement. Had we been involved, probably things would be
Yeah,
different.
and the piece of involvement should have come from the county, quite frankly, because we are your commissioners. So frankly, I don't know what happened because I wasn't here, but it is the commissioner's job to work with these other entities to make sure that you're getting full, accountable, transparent information, and that we're representing you in that whole conversation. So I just wanted to mention, that is our job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next to David Doman and Jan Smith. Either one of you can go first.
Go ahead. Okay, thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, David Doofman from the law firm of Bury, Elsner, and Hammond. We represent the city of Sandy, have for many years. Just as a matter of some procedural clarification, I guess, I did want to say that the mayor of Sandy, Mr. Bill King, and Scott Lazenby, the Sandy city manager, are also in attendance today. To Mr. Bates's comments, and I think this goes to a larger issue, frankly, of some misunderstandings about the breadth of this agreement. But just very briefly, following up and rebutting some of the statements he just made, he said that Title 11 nor ORS 195 are mentioned in the 2011 agreement. References to both of those are on pages 3 and 4 of the agreement, so I'm not sure where he's getting that. But the bigger point that I want to make, and I realize there's a lot of issues here, and I want to hit the high points in 3 minutes, is that the 2011 agreement and the restrictions that it would impose upon future development in the urban reserve, if that is brought into the UGB, and that's a question as to whether that happens in the future at some point. Metro would undertake that process in coordination with the county. But where it says, and I want to get into the language because Mr. Bates was rightfully looking at what the agreement says, the definition of what is applicable and where the buffer applies is out of what is termed Clackanoma Urban Reserve, and that's right out of the definitions in the agreement. It talks about urban reserve areas 1 and D as shown on the map, and that map is basically behind you. It's that dark green area that we're talking about. That's it. The light green area is not affected by any of the let's just call it the buffer. The 50-foot buffer does not apply to the light green area, only the dark green area. And it would only be on the south side of Highway 26, not the north. It may not say it that directly in this agreement, but if you look at Section 4, sub B, sub A of 2011, that is what it stands for. I guess our larger concern here is that we feel that this went through a very, very long process, a very carefully and there was a lot of negotiation that went into this, and there's a lot of history behind this. And one thing that we would do is urge the commission to hold on a little bit here and allow this to be at least discussed among the parties as the agreement envisioned, certainly. But I propose even before you would make a motion or a decision to begin the termination process, that you consider a couple facts. One, it is there's an overriding agreement here with the county that you have for if I could have 30 seconds, Chair, with the county under an existing IGA to have an agreement in place in this area to protect the visual corridor. So I propose that if the 2011 agreement is terminated, there would have to be a successor agreement in any case. Not until that underlying agreement is changed would that obligation go away. Finally, for the record, I would like to ask for a continuance to this hearing.
Thank you, sir. Did you have a comment?
I did. So I have a comment and a question. I believe just because the agreement does not specifically cite an RRS does not make it ineffective. The RRS still prevails even though it's not cited in the specific agreement. And the second thing, do you think that Mr. Bates's testimony was incorrect when he cited the specific ORS?
Are we talking about the ORS as it relates to notice here? Is that the one you're talking about?
I wasn't referring to the ORS 215 reference. I have no opinion on that. That relates to.
But you did address it in your testimony.
No.
Those are different ORS.
Ma'am, I was
Okay.
referring to Mr.
Well, I still
Bates'.
maintain that an ORS does not need to be specifically addressed in order to be effective in an overall reaching land use decision. I think the main issue is why you see this particular board and the citizens so concerned about this is the citizens, and rightly so, believe this is a land use takings of private property of the government without compensation. And it is viewed by some of the citizens in Boring who are not incorporated, who do not intend to become a city, as a city next door being very, what's the word, aggressive in trying to take over a piece of land they don't have the right to do. I think that is the issue. I think that if we lose sight of that, and if we keep talking about urban reserves, rural reserves, metro, and this and that, we will never get down to the actual issue of the question. So that is why we're taking this action. If I can say one more thing, Mr. Chair. This commission has been very generous in allowing people in the past to talk over 3 minutes. However, we have a packed room. I would sincerely ask that you respect our time limits and our agenda today to hold your testimony at 3 minutes. Most of the time, for a lot of people in this room, we have heard your testimony before, but that will allow this board to engage in questions and hopefully get some good answers in response. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Hello. I live in the Cottrell area of Boring. The Cottrell area is down Bluff Road a bit, and I've done quite a bit of business in Sandy. So I was aware of this intergovernmental agreement during the process, somewhat frustrated because I didn't feel like I had a say in what was going on at the time. So it was very frustrating for me that this was going on in the western part of our community in Boring. My neighbors in Boring were completely unaware of it and were feeling the same way back in with the very first agreement back in the day. So what I am asking is that as Stephen Bates had suggested, that you forego, get out of the agreement and such, and deal with the issue of the zoning in that area, protecting the look and feel of the greenway, the existing zoning that's there. Because we have this problem in our different governments having to do with understandings of agreements. When you have a situation of Metro, Gresham, Clackamas, and Sandy, everybody understands each one of those terms differently. Nobody looks at that agreement with any same eyes or same concept of what it's supposed to actually have happen and occur. So what I'm asking is for you to say, okay, we're done with that agreement, tear it up, call it good, and go, if you must renegotiate something, but look at the zoning for that area and what the zoning in that area already accomplishes. It accomplishes a greenway naturally with the styles of businesses and what you already have in place. And that's already done. We've got the thing with Metro where they've already designated that area. So there's no way, like with my property, there's not going to be any development for 50 years on it. So it's going to stay beautiful farmland in my area. So I ask that we stop having these overlaying misconceptions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The last two I have on this issue is John Chambers and Bob Skipper. Either one.
Okay. I'm John Chambers, and I've been around here a few years. Over 60 years ago, delivered books to the library in Sandy and Damascus, and I love the area. I grew up in Oregon City, and I watched this area very closely and live in part of it for most of my life. And the part that bothers me is what advantage is this buffer going to be to the public? Metro's supposed to be in charge of seeing the land used for the best use, and I just don't think that's the best use of 50 feet alongside of the highway that's going to have limbs stick out another 25 feet. So it really use up a lot of land. It's just been, I was last employee on building that highway, and it was kind of a gratifying fact to build something that was a straight through thing. And if I look at that, besides the issue of the people, half of them haven't been notified, they're in shock. And in talking to the ones I've talked about, I myself personally have 36 and 7,800 acres there adjoining the highway. I would much rather, if they could take the same amount of land and use it for a frontage road, which was talked about way back when we built the highway about 50 years ago, which they said as the cities come out, they will be building their own frontage roads to get people from point A to point B without driving way around. And from the day I was the last 3 days, it was my job with the paymaster to get it okayed by the state. We were raking the medium because people were trying to get to point A to point B, and it's been that way. It's been a hard thing for people over the years. Now, as these intersections are used more and more, like Heidi's, they build an overpass, and where those intersections are, there will be overpasses there eventually, maybe not in our lifetime. But I would be rather donate the 50-foot that they would like to use for buffer, if it could be used for a future frontage road. And I would venture to say that from the Heidi's intersection to the next one down, I could get at least 50% of the people willing to donate the same amount you're talking about. If it needed to be 50 or 60, 70 feet, no big deal. But if it could be used for good things for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and the people to come. We come on this earth, we hopefully could leave it in a little better shape when we leave. And that's it.
Perfect timing. Thank you, sir. And last, former sheriff.
Yes.
Bob Skipper.
Bob Skipper. And I have lived in the area about 68 years. First time I've testified before Clackamas County Commissioners, however, a few times with Multnomah County, a few times with the city of Sandy, and on a tree committee with the city of Sandy. But I think Commissioner Smith hit a lot of this right on the head. It's a fairness issue to take 50 feet from people along the corridor and plant in big Douglas fir, which, as was stated, is going to stretch out to a full 50 feet and be high maintenance. is really an unfair issue. We have property in Multnomah County as well as Clackamas County, and while it does not affect us, we're on the south side of the street. I do feel that I have a pulse of the people in the community, having lived there that long, and they feel like it's being jammed down their throat, and that is not the way government should operate. They should be accountable to Clackamas County. They should not be accountable to either of the neighboring cities. For that matter, Portland could step in and say, we ought to have some input too. But I really appreciate your taking the time to revisit this issue and, like I say, take another look at it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, everybody. We need to take a 5-minute break. Actually, I'd like to start again at 11:31. I have 11:26 currently. 5-minute break, and we'll resume. Thank you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Reconvene the business meeting of February 7th of the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners. The testimony is done, the staff presentation has been done, and so now, is there a motion for a resolution?
We have 2 motions on them.
Well, no, I think they were taken individually, so we'll do the first one first. That would be on the 1998 agreement.
Mr. Chair, I move that we consider withdrawing from the I move we approve the resolution withdrawing from the intergovernmental agreement on the Green Corridor and Rural Reserve and Population Corridor among Clackamas County, the City of Sandy Metro, and the Oregon Department of Transportation.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
So the motion's been made by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Schrader. Discussion.
Yes, I want to thank you for this opportunity, Chair Ludlow. As I said, I'm going to put this into the larger context that these are the same issues that play out with our community planning organizations across this county. I do feel sometimes like I'm in Groundhog Day because it's pretty consistent. And quite frankly, without going into great detail, years ago I worked with the community planning organization of Beaver Creek down in Salem over issues of concern with the city of Oregon City, believe it or not. So my viewpoint here is that we do represent the unincorporated areas of Clackamas County. I believe, quite frankly, a green corridor is a great idea. I think it makes sense. I think long-term, a green corridor in that area between the cities, Gresham, whatever, is probably a good idea. I think it's going to actually preserve the quality of life. I think it's going to maintain the rural character of the area. So my suggestion is that we move ahead with termination, and with great apologies to our friends at Sandy, because I also have a lot of respect for our cities, I would strongly suggest that we look at it again with an understanding, a larger context of the property rights issues that these folks are worried about, and kind of do a reset with this. I know it's Groundhog Day, but I do really believe our community planning organizations, our hamlets and villages, through our work with them, need to feel much more comfortable about the inclusion as we move forward with these kinds of agreements. So that's my reason. I want to thank Mayor King and Scott Lazenby and the folks from the law firm for being here today. And I've known both of them. I've known particularly Scott for a number of years, and I hope that we can continue to work together. And I would certainly volunteer to work with Boring on this issue if that would be helpful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, I want to just say a few things too. Just take a minute. I consider the City of Sandy a wonderful partner. I respect their government. I respect their citizenry. I consider them to be a very good partner, as I do all the cities in Clackamas County. But I think there is one overarching issue here, and that is, and it's very simple. And that's about private property rights. It's about government attempting to take private property without compensation. The homeowners affected by this don't want any government agency at all, whether it be Metro, the City of Sandy, the county, or even their own governments, to telling them they have to plant trees on their property. I find it frustrating that no one is standing up for the homeowners who are opposed to this. We've heard many legal arguments today about everything but private property rights. This is another case of government trying to impose their view of what they think the world should look like. All public officials need to look out for the best interests of the public. Indeed, we do, and I am one of those. That is why I am speaking up for the citizens and voting to withdraw from this agreement.
Thank you. I think, oh, that overhead's not up there again, that map, is it?
Put it up.
Can you put the map up? I think people ought to recognize again that, and this, we know that there's a contention with the urban-rural reserve, and there's some lawsuits about that. But fortunately, we're not part of that. But some people should notice that the particular light green and the city limits of Sandy, the light green is rural reserve. And if you drive through that area right now, which effectively will not change, in rural reserve, it will not. If you don't believe it, if you have an EFU piece of land, try to get a house on that, will you? So that beautiful drive, and it is a beautiful drive, from the city limits of Sandy through that light green will be there, all the way to 212 intersection with Sandy. I'm a real estate broker. I never apologize for that. I'm very knowledgeable about property rights and have fought for over 30 years for property rights. These people were not noticed, i.e., the state of Oregon says that, and I love the thing that's sent out by cities and counties. Please understand we're about to take the following action, which may, if you ever get one of those, don't believe that word, believe shall affect your property. These property owners were never even sent that cursory notice that you're about to lose some rights to your property. And that is just flat wrong. There's too much taking going on out there, and Commissioner Smith has expressed that before. There's too much taking without compensation. There's too much taking without notification, which is primary. I have studied this issue and certainly been to the CPOs. And by the way, I met with Mayor King, who was very gracious, and he drinks less coffee than I do. Thank you, Mayor King. We have met together, Mr. Bates and Mayor King, and you know, certainly we agree to disagree. I always say, and certainly on this commission we say, it's okay to disagree without being disagreeable. But there's a disagreement here. I feel very strongly that there wasn't a process followed, and also feel very strongly that this area should have autonomy from any city. It's like it was previously expressed. Well, does Portland get to come in next and beat up Boring and tell them what they will have and what they will plant? It's just flat wrong. And so there's my non-prepared statements. I would like to ask legal counsel, it was advised by Mr. Bates, I believe, that this was not a quasi-judicial decision on this. Got any opinion on that?
Yes, Chair Ludlow, this is not a land use decision, nor is it a quasi-judicial decision of this board.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, any further discussion? I'm the gentleman. Ladies and, yes.
I always have to say one more thing. You know, I think what I feel badly about most about this is that you're all neighbors. CPOs, community planning organizations, are neighbors with the city. And I really think, Mr. Bates, you expressed values in your statement that I strongly suspect the city agrees with as well. So as your representative from an unincorporated areas, I hope that with appropriate notification and appropriate participation, that the Boring CPO really may help us reconsider this and maybe look at a renegotiation in a later date. I think that would make sense, because I think that we can work through these issues since we're all Oregonians, we're all Americans, and we all share the same values. I think that Sandy can get what it feels it needs, and Boring can get what it needs as well. So that would just be my caveat. I am in support of withdrawing from the agreement.
I would ask the clerk to take the poll.
Sure. Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Schrader?
Yes.
Chair Ludlow?
Yes. Passes 3-0. It will go into effect. That's on the 1998 one. Now, the next on the agenda is, and it's been spoken to also, is the motion to initiate. Now, remember, this is initiation of a plan to terminate the 2011 IGA affecting the same area. Is there a motion?
Yes, I move to initiate the termination of the 2001 intergovernmental. 2011 intergovernmental agreement regarding the Highway 26 corridor among Clackamas County, City of Sandy, and Metro.
I'll second that.
Motion been made by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Schrader. Discussion.
Mr. Chair, this is to initiate the termination. I would like to see us sit down and talk with the affected parties on this, if it's in the best interest to do so. I'm not opposed to taking a vote today. If we take a vote today, I will move in favor of this for the same reasons I cited earlier regarding private property rights.
Commissioner Schrader?
Well, I will support this with the intent of trying to, with the help of Providence, to finally solve in the larger context all the tensions we have between our municipalities and our community planning organizations. We're neighbors, as I said, we all have the same values. This is like Groundhog Day for me. It happens again and again and again, where we as commissioners are pitted against our, or feeling as if we're adversarial with our municipalities because our community planning organizations feel left out of process. And I will say that I believe it's our job as commissioners, because we are their agents, we are their representatives. It's our job to make sure, as these things move forward, that they are fully informed. And I really intend to do that. And again, I will go here because I think at this point it's the right thing to do, but I would hope that we can have a reset and a larger conversation about the merits of this idea for the good of the order, with your commissioners working beside you. So with that, here we go.
Thank you, Commissioners. As to my testimony or opinions, I'll ditto the ladies. And now, if the clerk would please call the polling.
Sure. Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Schrader?
Yes.
Chair Ludlow?
Yes, it passes 3-0.
Well, Commissioner, though.
Yes.
So it passes, but
It initiates a process.
it initiates a process, but we have 3 out of the 5. So remember what you said earlier about
It
quorum?
passes. It is effective to start the process. Remember, what I said was if there's 3 commissioners and it came in 2-1, it would not pass.
Okay.
And so we have to have 3 full votes. We did do that. So it is effective. And again, it initiates the process. It doesn't terminate, as is in the 98 agreement, the action we took.
And I hope that this starts a larger conversation as we initiate it with our partners. Okay, so there we go.
Indeed. Now, it's time for, I guess we're going to have any clarifying questions. Mr. Chandler, again on this issue, I believe, is it? Yes.
We are here to assist if we can. This is the chair's resolution, so we don't have any staff presentation. We will have the resolution. We can put it up on the screen so folks can look at it as it's discussed.
First of all, I'm going to probably ask the clerk to go ahead. It's up on the screen. If you don't mind, if you could read that into the record, Mary, I think that's appropriate. And then we will start taking testimony. We have some elected officials here today, and I'm going to defer to them initially because I know what kind of schedule you can have. If I've missed some, please let me know. And regardless, Jim Knapp, you're on the water board, but you're not going to go first. So there you go. Sorry. We have Mr. Tom Milkey and Joe Courtwright. So and you can welcome to both come set up here first. If I have missed, I don't see any other elected officials. These gentlemen are from Clark County, but if there are, certainly let me know. And Mary.
Okay, this is a resolution to oppose the current design of the Columbia River crossing Whereas nearly 5.5 billion cost of Columbia River crossing will result in significant losses of state and federal funding opportunities for our future county and city transportation infrastructure needs. And whereas new fees and taxes will likely be required to and imposed upon our citizenry without the opportunity of voter approval, and whereas there is abundant evidence of widespread and overwhelming public opposition, and whereas there are better plans available which will provide significant savings and gain public support, and whereas we, as elected officials, are obligated to speak up for our citizens and to protect vital future funding sources, and whereas it is important for elected officials to stand up and be counted on what may be the largest transportation project in the state's history. Now therefore, the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners resolve the following. The Clackamas County Commission hereby directs the county administrator to notify all those concerned with the CRC, including ODOT, WDOT, TriMet, CTran, Metro, the City of Portland, the City of Vancouver, and Washington and Oregon governor offices, both state legislatures, congressional delegates, that the Clackamas County Commission strongly objects to the efforts to commit any funding to the Columbia River crossing as currently planned. And two, the Clackamas County urges all other Oregon and Washington cities and counties to stand up and be counted on this very important matter.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go right into public testimony. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Tom Milkey, a Clark County Commissioner. I'm here today to testify on behalf of myself and give you a little experience on how I'm connected with the project. As you know, it's been very, very controversial. And I think I've seen the same thing here. The lack of representing the people have made big changes in who's representing them. And it's been a big campaign issue in Clark County for the last 10 years. And we've seen heads roll when they don't represent the people. My experience with this started as a legislator. In 1998, I was part of a delegation that met with the Oregon delegation over at the railroad station. And after about 4 or 5 hours of working, we came to the conclusion that the corridor was at near capacity in 1998. And we were tasked with finding a new corridor to go north and south. And that didn't happen because the agenda drive behind light rail superseded it, and we just didn't do that. I left the legislature in 2004, thought I was going to retire, and I got involved in being part of Economic Transportation Alliance, which is now known as Third Bridge now. And then being unhappy with that, I ran for county commissioner and have been just re-elected. And for the first time in 31 years, or 35 years, or 31 years at the time, the majority of Clark County commissioners had changed to a more conservative base. And it was over this project. This project has been hard to tie down, hard to find responsibility. It's been agenda-driven, and the answers have not been forthcoming. More recently, over the years, more and more information has come forward to make a black cloud over this issue. It's not just a $3 billion project. It's looking more like a $10 billion project by the time you get done financing this. And it seems to grow and grow and grow with no accountability. This year, I learned, as well as I was connected, I learned the connection with the TriMet shop going to be modified or built in Clackamas County, and the rebuilding of the steel bridge. It seems like it never ends, and that no one has all the answers. We face losing hundreds of jobs over there with the new proposed design of a bridge that's too low, and that's not acceptable. So one of the things we've been trying to do is I think what you're suggesting is, stop spending $1.5 million, $2 million every month until we get a handle on what we're doing. And I appreciate you taking up this very controversial issue. It takes a lot of guts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perfect timing, sir. You're used to that, aren't you? Thank you. Mr. Joe Kirkred.
Mr. Chairman, I'm very flattered that you asked me up, but I have to say that I am not now, nor have I ever been an elected official. So
Oh, my
in light
gosh.
of your expressed priorities, I'm happy to
Well,
defer
then go
to the
back to your
elected
seat
officials.
then. I mean, because, no, I mean, you're fair enough. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Joe Courtwright. I'm an economist with Impresa in Portland, and I've spent the last several years doing financial analysis of the Columbia River Crossing project. I have some written testimony I'll be happy to provide with you and some supporting information that details my analysis. I'll summarize it for you briefly now. I would like to make 7 points. First of all, the Columbia River Crossing is based, the financial analysis is based on extremely over-optimistic traffic forecasts. The traffic forecasts were last done in 2005. They were based on 1990s data. They essentially assume $1 or $1.25 gasoline prices. And they're based on a model that the modelers who built the model say cannot be used to accurately forecast traffic on facilities that have tolls on them. What we're waiting for is something called an investment grade analysis that will not be done for almost a year, and that will be the true numbers that will tell you exactly what we produced. Right now, traffic on those bridges is 19,000 vehicles per day below what their model says it would have been if they were right. So wildly inaccurate forecasts that really jeopardize the estimate of the amount of toll revenue that can be produced. Second point, there's an assumption that the federal government will contribute $400 million in an earmark or discretionary funding for the highway portion of the project. The CRC got nothing in the reauthorization bill. Moreover, the reauthorization bill that passed at the federal level last year essentially eliminated all discretionary funds. Funds flow only to states by a formula. So we get no more or less money whether we go ahead with this project. There is a project called, or a category called Projects of National and Regional Significance that was not funded and has not been funded. They're counting on $850 million from the Federal Transit Administration. That would be effectively almost 100% of the cost of light rail. FTA, as you know, with PMLR, only usually typically provides 50%. So there could be a huge shortfall there that the state would have to make up if it is not made available. Fourth point is that there are likely to be cost overruns. ODOT's and WashDOT's records of bringing mega projects in under budget is very poor. You're probably familiar with the Highway 20 project, which was supposed to cost $110 million and is now going to be slightly less than $400 million if they can finish it, and it'll be about 5 years late. Mega projects like this tend to run about 30% over budget. That's $1 billion that you would have to come up with. Fifth point, ODOT's financial condition has deteriorated substantially. We're now spending about 30% of gas tax revenues at the state level on debt service, repaying money that we have borrowed. 10 years ago, that was 1.5% of our budget. And ODOT's revenue forecasts have simply been wrong. They have, I could just do one more minute, Mr. Chairman, I apologize to others, or I can just hand in my written testimony.
30 seconds we've been running.
Okay, 30 seconds, okay. So, and ODOT has, financial projections have been absolutely wrong and have fallen well below that. The other thing you should know, I think this will be of particular interest to Clackamas County, the investment grade analysis will show that there'll be substantial, when you toll the I-5 bridges but not the 205 bridge, it will divert substantial traffic. That will produce additional congestion and delay that will affect Clackamas County. That hasn't been modeled. And finally, the two bills that are pending before the legislature do authorize essentially unlimited borrowing for this project, but they don't provide any additional revenue to the state highway trust funds. So essentially this project and the borrowing for this project get in line ahead of all the other highway projects in the state. So this project, coupled with the perilous financial situation, the over-optimistic assumptions about revenue, mean that if you go ahead with this project, it's likely to soak up transportation revenues in the state for the next decade or more. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Joe?
Mr. Courtwright, this analysis was paid for by Plaid Pantry, is that correct?
Yeah, the work that I've done over the last about 2 years has been financed by Plaid Pantry, but I've been working on the financial analysis of the project for about the past 6 years.
6 years. Why did Plaid, may I ask why Plaid Pantry, business? I mean, why were they, I'm curious about that.
You know, that question would be better directed to my client, who's the CEO of Plaid Pantry, Chris Gerard. He had a couple of stores in
North Portland that would be affected by the project, and started going to meetings about 2 years ago, has gone to virtually all of the principal public meetings on the project, and after having done that for a while, learned of the work that I had done and asked me to do some more work on the project.
Okay, so you had done previous work, but when he learned of your analysis, he decided to hire your firm in order to make his case as a private entity?
To do further financial work on the project, correct.
Yeah, I was very curious about that. I guess the other question I have is, and maybe this is better directed at Chair Ludlow, and you actually made a statement a few moments ago, Chair, about that we're not part of that process with the Urban Rural Reserve, and I just want to make a comment that I was surprised to see this on an agenda when at this point, most of the process is at play in the legislature with Senator Lee Byer, Senator Bruce Starr, I think Representative Bentz, and there is someone else who is involved in it, and I'm sorry, it's probably in my notes somewhere. So the play on this particular issue is actually in the legislature, and part of our state agenda, we did not take a position on the CRC. It wasn't part of that overall discussion, so I'm really puzzled as to why this is on our agenda. But Mr. Cartwright, thank you for the answers. That really was over and above what we were going to speak to you about, but this is a puzzlement to me why this particular issue is on the agenda.
Answer your question here shortly. The reason this is on the agenda is because, if you've noticed, we have a legislative agenda, which we all passed, that's correct, and it passed unanimously with this commission. We approached the state of Oregon on a multi-amount of matters, very important matters, and most of them are financial. What a coincidence, right? And this one needs to be addressed because this commissioner thinks that there's a huge sucking sound coming from that river, and it will soon gobble up everything that we thought represented the future in this county, let alone this state. So I believe that we should take a stand. It is never curious to address something down at the state of Oregon. It's only curious if they ever listen to you.
With all due respect, Chair, I do want to make a comment, and this is again in the, for accountability and transparency, being transparent about this. We do have a federal agenda. We have a state legislative agenda. And normatively, we come together as a group where we discuss what we're going to be doing, what we're going to be supporting, opposing, so on and so forth. And this was not part of that larger discussion. So I guess the point I'm making, there's a process issue here. Certainly it is your purview as chair to put something on the agenda, but I would like to say for the public that our normal process in terms of how we do this was not followed. Commissioner Bernard is not here. Commissioner Savas is doing other business right now, and we were not informed about it. And essentially, my understanding was you called our administrator over a weekend and insisted that this be put on the agenda without a thorough discussion of this as part of our consensus. So I just want to make that clear and public. Thank you.
Here's what's clear. We went through, it is absolutely true, our legislative agenda in total and made a lot of recommendations to the state of Oregon. We never opened one of those up for public testimony. Not one. Yet, I say we open this one up to the public. I'd rather err with that mistake. Thank you.
Well, Chair Ludlow, point of process again, because I do think it's very important that folks know how we do business here. And here's the issue. We actually had that conversation at a work session, and it's taped, and it is always open to the access of the public. When I first was here as a commissioner, we did not tape those conversations. Now we tape them, and they're available so people can find out about them. It's the process of way we do business is discuss things in a work session that's open to the public, that's transparent, and anyone can come and listen at the work session as well. Frankly, it's one of the reasons we have them in here in this particular room in case members of the public want to come and listen. So really, this has been a breach of process, frankly, that I've never seen before, and I'm very, very surprised.
Please bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome here today to talk on these items. This is our business meeting, where you're allowed to do that. Planning sessions and work sessions, sure, you can come observe us, but you can't say a darn thing. And that's what's wrong
Actually,
with us.
Chair Ludlow, that's incorrect. That's at the discretion of the chair and the commission. So if you would like to make a policy change right now that the public can come and testify and be in our work sessions, I'd be glad to make that motion and get a vote right
You
now.
can go ahead and make any motion
would
you
like-
wish.
I
We're on
would-
a separate item in the discussion, Ms. Schrader.
It's
but,
all about
you can-
it's all about accountability.
It is indeed.
And
You're
it's
welcome
all
to make a
about
motion.
transparency. And if the public wants to come to our work sessions and speak, I am all for it, and anyone in this room is welcome. And I suggest that's how we continue to do business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Courtwright. The next two I have is Patrick Sheehan and Paul Edgar. After that, Scott Oldham and Peter Watts. Mr. Sheehan, you turned in 2 blue cards for this item. I have to limit you to 1.
Did I really turn in 2 blue cards?
Yes, you did.
Oh, okay. Well, for the Chair Ludlow, members of the commission, thank you. My name is Patrick Sheehan. I am a citizen of Clackamas County, and until very recently, I was the state representative for House District 51, where I served in the legislature on the House Transportation and Economic Development Committee, where we had oversight over a number of transportation projects, including the Columbia River Crossing. I'm here today to ask you to not advance this resolution for reasons of political consequence. And I just want to speak really candidly about what I fear will happen if this passes. And I have 4 points to make. Opposing a project where the stakeholders include the governor, Oregon Department of Transportation, the Oregon legislature, and the federal government will inevitably result in political consequence in the form of being denied additional funding for surface transportation in Clackamas County. Point number 2, on July 1st, the state of Oregon is going to have more than $900 million in extra bonding authority as a result of retiring debt and refinance debt, and which means that the proposals on the table in the legislature are using this money, not any gas tax increase or additional fee. There's no correlation between defunding the Columbia River Crossing and any money earmarked for Clackamas County. I think to the contrary, if Clackamas County adopts this resolution and the project fails, it's reasonable to expect political retaliation for that in the absence of Clackamas County projects from new general obligation bonds. I understand this resolution is intended to demonstrate Clackamas County's need for transportation infrastructure, but I believe it will have the reverse intended effect. The downside for the county is just too big, and I'm not asking you to go along with the project or show your support for it. I'm only asking that you choose not to take a position and choose not to be involved with this. I think the future of transportation dollars that leverage partner money is at stake. And on a personal note, the Columbia River Crossing will get these guys that are, these grizzly guys in the back of the room, if you haven't noticed them, we'll get them back to work. And I think that personally, I look forward to that, not just because they can feed their families, but because they won't be out campaigning against me again. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Edgar.
Thank you, Chair and Commission. My name is Paul Edgar. I'm a resident of Oregon City, Clackamas County. I have probably 15 years involved close in with this whole Columbia River Crossing I-5 corridor considerations. I personally do not support it. Okay, I do not believe that it's justified. I believe that there are reasonable alternatives that cost less, that provide greater benefit, and particularly benefit for Clackamas County, that are that are far more important to you and to all of the citizens here. I'm also on the Clackamas County Advisory Committee doing the TSP, the Long-Term Transportation System Plan. And I'm an urban renewal commissioner, so I'm important in my life is trying to look at jobs and how to create jobs in Oregon City. And we have 80% of the people of Oregon City leaving Oregon City to find employment because we don't have jobs. And one of the critical areas of creating jobs is solving some of the problems like with the I-205 corridor. I sat down with David Cox one time, a long time ago, David Cox, myself, and Cam Gilmore. And we talked about the I-205 corridor and about the Columbia River crossing. And out of that conversation, we came up that there was really three alternatives. If you improved the 205 corridor so it fulfilled its full capacity opportunities that exist within the right-of-way, it would in itself eliminate virtually all of the justification for the Columbia River crossing to be there. So by just investing into the 205 corridor and making it the primary interstate truck route through this region, by doing that, we bring the type of capacity that creates jobs and economic development and investment into Clackamas County. Now, if we go ahead with the Columbia River crossing and it makes the next 20 years of federal funding away from our region for one project, we will not be able to think out these other projects that we want and we know we need to create jobs. We need those federal funding dollars coming down through the process into this county so that we can be nimble, we can be quick, we can make things happen. And for a person like myself, who is just concerned as could be about jobs and about the economic future of this area, I'll tell you what, this Columbia River crossing is the most negative, irresponsible project that I've ever seen in my whole life. And I could even go south of it, this third bridge project along the railroad bridge, replacing something there. We have to replace the railroad bridge that crosses the Columbia River. And just replacing it with a multi-mode bridge and creating a secondary corridor to the I-5 corridor would be amazing. We also, in the Trade and Transportation Partnership Study Group, when we were originally before the CRC task force, we came to the understanding we would never widen I-5 greater than its existing 3 lanes. It's broken. You have to recognize the I-5 corridor through Portland is a very broken corridor, and putting money into a broken corridor and fixing 1/10 of it is an error.
I'll call time, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Scott Oldham and Peter Watts.
Hello, Commissioners.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Yeah, why don't you go first? My name is Scott Oldham, and I'm here with 2 hats. 1, I'm a Washington County resident, and 2, I am a representative for the Painters and Allied Trades. As a Washington County representative or a citizen, I kind of look at this situation as, if you know Intel over there and all the boom that we're dealing with over there, there's a lot of growth in our community. Small businesses are popping up. It's incredible over there. And I thought, oh, what an advantage we have over Clackamas County. And you know, on the selfishness of that, I thought, wait a minute, I need to look at this bigger picture. And that's why I'm asking you guys today to look at the bigger picture of this. You know, what you're stating out there, you're making a comment to the entire region. This region, going forward, years to come, this will impact all of that. The gentleman said, you know, talking about the 205 corridor and how important that is. And other than, you know, moving the ports possibly over to the 205, I don't really see that as a clear option. And as far as my other hat as a painter's representative, I would like to say that we have hundreds of members being laid off as we speak down there at Freightliner. They make production of trucks and so forth. The resistance against transportation issues on the federal level and on your level, you know, this is causing 25 to 50% layoffs, for our workers. And I'm not just talking union here, I'm talking about just tradesmen in general, tradeswomen also. And so the impact of not considering these things on basically a national scale is, I think, a detriment to all of us. And so whenever you send out this notice, I would suggest that you send it out to all of those in Oregon and Washington, every citizen, because this does impact every one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Watts.
I'm Peter Watts. I'm a resident of unincorporated Clackamas County. And I think all of us know that there's no shortage of issues and problems going on in Clackamas County, but the Columbia River crossing certainly is not one of those. It's not our bridge. It's not our infrastructure. It doesn't touch the Clackamas County property. And I don't understand why you want to take a position on it. 63% of our residents said they didn't want to financially support the Selwood Bridge, and a number of you have indicated that you voted against financially supporting the Selwood Bridge. The main reason being that it's not our infrastructure. That Clackamas County resources should not be used for a bridge that is located in Multnomah County, and yet I'm sitting here today and we're using your time, which is certainly a county resource, and staff time, to talk about a bridge that is not in Clackamas County. This is a issue for Clark County and Multnomah County and the governor and the legislature, but I don't understand how this is a issue for us. And with all of the issues that we truly are dealing with, that we need to deal with, that are critically important, why are you spending the time on this issue? This is not something that I can understand, and it's not a allocation of your resources that I would agree with. I would urge you to table this, and I would urge you not to take a position on the Columbia River crossing. I guess the other point that I would make regarding comments that I've heard from you about directing other jurisdictions is that several people have made very critical comments of former Chair Lehan because she apparently tried to tell Washington County where they could or could not put their industrial land. And that was something that was roundly criticized during the election, and yet now you're telling Multnomah County what they can do with their bridge. It's up to Clackamas County to decide what modes of transportation can serve our citizens, whether that's cars or trains or bikes or the mix. We get to make that determination ourselves. And it's not appropriate for Portland or another jurisdiction to tell us what we must use. And yet, that's what you're doing today. You're urging Multnomah County, you're telling them not to use a specific mode of transportation. And that's their determination to make, and the city of Portland's determination to make. And so I would urge you to table this and not to take a position on the CRC going forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Jim Knapp and Tiffany Couch, followed by Kim Parker and Eric Winters.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is, it's afternoon now, I think, I'm sorry. My name is Tiffany Couch. I am a certified public accountant and a certified fraud examiner, and I've spent 2 years, hundreds of hours, and have poured over literally tens of thousands of documents related to the Columbia River Crossing project. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony to you. I come to you today not as a pro or con project advocate, but as an advocate for you, the elected official who needs information to make informed decisions. I will address you today as I would any client who has hired me to perform due diligence on a project they are considering an investment in. As your advisor today, I think it is important to understand the ramifications of moving forward or supporting a project like this. With 8 years, $163 million spent, too many questions are left unanswered, and serious questions are there related to the return on investment of this project. Really quickly, let's first start with bridge height. 4 bridges have been built over the Columbia River between 1926 and 1992, each of them between 140 and 210 feet. Why are we building a project of 116 feet that will not serve the river users of today, let alone the river users of tomorrow? That is not a bridge of the future. According to the CRC map, which I have provided to you today, this is a $3.1 billion project, or a $3.5 billion project, whichever way you look at it. Those numbers come from their CEVP report, which I've also just given you. It's a 134-page report. I've given you 1 page. Did you know that we are building a phase 1 project? And did you know that this phase 1 project, which I've given you the detailed budget for, eliminates the Victory Braid, the Marine Drive northbound flyover, and the north connection at SR 500. If those northbound fixes aren't made, what is the impact to commuters? That brings me to tolls. I've provided you with the CRC's tolling revenue schedule, $3.3 billion. That's $1.2 billion in building the project and $2 billion in operating the bridge, as well as the interest on the bridge. The HB 2260 or 2800, I'm sorry, House Bill 2800 that was provided yesterday, that adds an additional $450 million in tolls to this project. Thank you.
Chair, I have some questions.
Yeah.
You know, may I ask where you live? Are you Clackamas?
Oh, I'm sorry. I do live in Vancouver, Washington, and I own a business there.
So you own a business. Now, with all of this analysis, did someone hire you to do the analysis? Is this on your own volition?
Yes, ma'am. David Medor hired me to provide this analysis.
And who is he, and what does he do, and what is the context of that?
Chairman of Clark
Certainly.
County Commission.
Certainly. Well, 2 years ago, when I was hired, Mr. Medor had asked for a public records request of this project as a private citizen and a business owner who puts more than 100 people to work every day. And when he asked for the expenditures on this project, he was not provided a report. He was provided with 724 electronic files that each had thousands of pieces of paper in them. And he hired me as a CPA and a CFE, as a forensic accountant, to identify what the costs of the project were. I told him, that's crazy. We should be able to go down and get a report, and you don't need to pay me to do that. And in short, we ended up having to go through all of those tens of thousands of documents because to this day, the CRC project office is unable to print a very simple accounting report that would tell us who was paid and what for. So that is the work that I've done. And let me address that really quickly. As a certified public accountant, it doesn't matter if David Medor hires me. It doesn't matter if you hire me. It doesn't matter, quite literally, the 13 open cases I have open. My job as a certified public accountant is to conduct an analysis that is uses my own professional opinions and skepticism. And Mr. Medor has hired me, other clients have hired me, and I've told them I'm going to do this work on my own volition, and their opinions have nothing to do with my own.
So thank you. A follow-up, Chair?
Sure.
So you have other clients that are opposed to this that you're working for other than Mr. McDore?
Oh, no, ma'am. I just meant that as a forensic accountant who has had hundreds of clients over the years, I think it's really important to understand that it doesn't matter who hires me or who is funding my work. My opinions are my own and are as a result of my own professional standards.
May I ask, that's nice to know, may I ask what your background is in transportation? And is this the first kind of transportation analysis you've done, or you've done other
I am
ones?
a former governmental auditor. I've audited cities, counties, school districts, special districts in the state of Washington. I've worked with cities and in both the states of Oregon and Washington. This is an accounting analysis. I have not had any opinions related to traffic or to congestion problems. My job is to provide accounting analysis, which is exactly what I've done.
Yeah, but I must tell you that from my perspective, it certainly would give me more comfort if someone actually had some transportation expertise, although
And,
I
and how
certainly-
would that change what I've done? I mean, with the 4 reports that I've issued, how does that affect your opinion of my work? Because what part of those 4 reports have you read and understood that had anything to do with transportation?
I'm just curious as to what your background is, where you came from, who hired you, and what agenda is behind this.
I don't know how that's germane to anything. We don't do that to everybody that testifies, and we're not going to start now.
I think it's really
So
important that I
appreciate
don't
you
have an
showing-
agenda, and my job is to give you information, and this information is too important not to have.
Thank you very much.
With all due respect, I respectfully disagree. And Chair, I just find it awful that people from Vancouver and other places outside of this county can come here and tell us their opinion.
So from now
Certainly
on,
it's
we only
fake.
accept testimony from those in Clackamas County. Please note
Well,
that.
I think,
Thank
I think this really goes back to your June 2008 letter that you signed, Ms. Schrader, and it says, while Clackamas County is not considered a directly impacted jurisdiction in the Columbia River crossing process, the decisions made regarding the CRC will certainly have direct and significant impacts on our business, that being that of Clackamas County and our commuters. You go on to say, acknowledgement that this project will create increased demand and congestion on other parts of the highway system is essential and must lead to a finance plan that balances revenue generation, demand management, and regional equity. And I think it's really
We
important
have
to
to wrap
understand that
this up.
$4 billion of
We have to wrap this up.
I
goals
think
is
we,
not an equitable finance.
I think we should move on, but I am very concerned about the externalities of folks who are coming here. I have to be quite honest about that. We are Clackamas County, and certainly everyone has an opportunity to speak, but there seems to be in this particular issue, Chair, external issues and external folks coming in that, quite frankly, has never happened before on this commission.
I've seen it plenty of times. We'll let that go. Mr. Knapp, thank you. And thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Commissioners. Today, I was really put out by some of the citizens in Oak Grove that didn't mention my name about the light rail. I was chief petitioner 3-401 that gives the citizens the right to vote. I worked very hard on that project for a year and a half. The county commissioners would not come to us at all, the citizens, and give us any reasons or display of reasoning. That activated me because I live in the community where I've been there since 60 years, second generation, and I want to tell you, Martha, I'm an expert in Oak Grove affairs. And I'll tell you something else, is the former commission that where I first started and got my experience in initiative petitions was Sewer Wars of 2006, where the former commissioners had sued us for gathering signatures to stop us from doing what we're doing, to get the word out to the citizens, ratepayers, to see what was equitable and financially secure. What we found, they were going to engage in a $1 billion project. And then I was engaged in 3-164 in the Oak Lodge sanitary area, where we passed that unanimously, I think, Paul, 81% to pull away from the county and do our own thing in that area, about $60 million a day they're spending. And likewise, at the county sewer district, Clackamas County Sewer District number 1, I think we're somewhere around $275 million for their retrofit. As you know, I'm also an elected official just like you guys are. So I'm fiscally responsible. Also, like I told you, I'm a concrete contractor going back several years in the area. I'm fiscally responsible. And that's what brings me here today. I have a major concern. And again, I'm for construction, Martha. I have a fiscal responsibility to tell the ratepayers what this thing's going to cost. And if I can get information, because the commissioners won't give it to me, the staff at any counties won't give it to me, the cities won't give it to me, or make a mixed minutia of information that I can't understand. It's the rights of these people in the county to understand where the money's coming from and how it affects us financially in Clackamas County and our financial roads, transportation modes. For years, I've been on to Cam Gilmore, your transportation director. Where is your money going? Where is it? And he says, we're having less cars. And if we, I don't have that much time left, so I want to know where the money's at. I want to know how it's pilfered to construction companies. I want to know straight up how there's no going to be any cost overruns that cost the ratepayers and taxpayers for centuries in this county. That's never been done. And all I get from the former Board of County Commissioners is just a big irritation. But we can overcome that, and that's why I'm here today. Thank you.
Kim Parker and Eric Winters. Those two are followed by Jan Smith and Robert Camarillo.
Mr. Chair, just want to
Mr.
make
Savas.
a comment. The last speaker, Mr. Knapp, a number of things he said towards the end there I have to agree with as far as getting the information. I think that the magnitude of this project really commands that. I do know that a couple weeks ago we had actually requested, and there is a formal request to the State Treasurer's Office to get an explanation on funding. We made a request to ODOT to come and explain and get the details. We have been inundated with some actually fantastic material. I want to appreciate everything I've got and what you've brought forth. And, you know, I'm frankly overwhelmed with what's actually been brought forth, and I frankly believe that we should really study this and get citizens like Mr. Knapp and others, frankly, the information they need to make a very calculated decision and rationale for whatever it is we choose to do. But I think that we need to be succinct and clear to make sure that we, again, protect our infrastructure and do what we need to do. There's a problem that exists. I believe there is a problem. And I think we need to make sure that if we're going to guide this or make suggestions or vote on it up or down, that we do that with a succinct, clear message of what we think we like about it, what we don't like about it, what needs to be fixed so that when we do solve this problem, we have those recommendations in hand.
Thank you. Next two speakers, your choice on who goes first.
Hello, I'm Kim Parker. I'm a Clackamas County resident, and I come to you today with my Clackamas County Business Alliance hat on. I have several hats, and I just want to be very clear about that. Unlike other business associations, the Clackamas County Business Alliance has not taken an official position on the CRC, but it was recommended to me that we put out some sort of an informal survey. So last week, midweek, we published a survey to all of our members. By the way, we're a business organization, membership association representing, we believe, although we need to double check our numbers, I think they've gone up, at least 15,000 employees in the county. And our mission is to support business and economic growth in the county. So just as a reminder of that. So we published a survey asking our members a one-question survey on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being not very and 5 being very, how important is the CRC to your business? And of our respondents, we have about 61% who identified either a 4 or a 5 on that scale. And then about 15% said a 1. And then the remainders were in a 2 and a 3. So I come today just to provide you with that feedback from businesses who are operating right here in Clackamas County.
Thank you.
Mr. Winters.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Winters. I am a resident of Clackamas County, and I'm here representing myself. And I wanted to take this opportunity to thank the commissioners for giving us this great opportunity to weigh in on this resolution. It's unfortunate looking back that the BCC has not always requested public testimony when it has decided to take positions involving the BCC, or involving the CRC funding. I took the occasion yesterday to look back at some of the previous policy statements that the Board of County Commissioners made with regard to the CRC funding project. And what I was able to glean from those letters was that perhaps the interests of the county really aren't being served by the project as it currently stands. In June of 2008, this Board of County Commissioners, in a letter signed by Lynn Peterson, Bill Kennemer, and Martha Schrader, made the following statement. We believe that tolls should be instituted on the I-205 bridge concurrent with tolling the new I-5 bridge. in order to ensure that a funding source can be utilized to make needed investments throughout the regional north-south highway system. We cannot afford to inhibit one integral part of the highway system while focusing on another, particularly if the improvements simply redistribute congestion problems from one area of the region to another. The interest was pretty clear at the time. If you build and toll I-5 and people need to get across the river, what bridge are they going to take? They're going to be taking this one. They're going to be clogging our freeways over here. This is an issue for Clackamas County, and you guys recognized this when you sent this letter in 2008, Commissioner Schrader. In 2010, this BCC also sent a letter noting that perhaps it wasn't going to be as easy as they thought to get I-205's bridge tolled. They nevertheless were trying to encourage a pilot project to do that, and warned, we have grave concerns that a funding strategy for the Columbia River crossing that prioritizes it above all other regional transportation investments. While we understand that there are rare funding opportunities for this project, we are also too familiar with the trade-offs involved in selected regional funding priorities. This is an issue for Clackamas County. This is going to tie up money regionally that could be used for other projects for decades. But more than that, and if I could take 1 minute.
Quickly.
All right. The bill that's being proposed in the legislature right now, House Bill 2800, contains an emergency clause. There's a reason for that emergency clause. Now, there are a couple of former legislators up here that can tell you emergency clauses get attached to bills all the time. What that means is the bill can go in effect within 90 days of the end of the session. And what it does is it allows the legislature to circumvent the right for us as citizens to petition to put this up in a referendum. When it came to the Selwood Bridge, there was no emergency clause. We gathered signatures, and the result was determined. Shady politicians put an emergency clause in this bill so that the voters of this county and other counties won't have an opportunity. And this may be our only opportunity through you guys to speak, because we're going to be cut out of the conversation.
You got to be done, Eric. Okay. Thank you both. Next to, again, Jan Smith and Robert Camarillo. Did I do it right?
You did, that'll work.
Or you go with L as low?
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
All right, good enough.
Glad to have you back.
Is Jan Smith here
Commissioner
too?
Schrader?
All right, she's not here. Go ahead.
I think she left.
Well, I'm going to keep it short. I'm going to wear two hats as well. I reside here in Oregon City. I'm a resident of Clackamas County, and I also represent over 1,200 members of the Iron Workers Union. We have about 500 families here in Clackamas County, and we want to just urge Clackamas County to stay out of this issue. This bridge has been studied for over 7 years. It's time to get this bridge built. There's over 25 locals, union trades that make up our building trades, and unemployment is anywhere from 20% to 40%. I mean, we got people that are losing their homes every day, people out there without health insurance. I mean, we don't believe this is a position for you guys to be a part of or take sides. Just remain neutral, stay out of it, and let Multnomah County deal with this. This is their issue. This is Clark County and Multnomah's issue, not Clackamas County. I'd like to see us use our resources somewhere else. They talk about alternatives. Well, what are the alternatives? I mean, we don't have any members working in Clackamas County because there's nothing being built in Clackamas County. We're having to go to other counties to work, to spend money, to stay, buy fuel, buy groceries, because we live here, but there's nothing going on here in Clackamas County. When are we going to build something here? When? Thank you.
Thank you. The next two speakers, Les Poole, Steve Shop. We only have one more after that, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience.
Les Poole, Gladstone.
I appreciate the extra time I got earlier, and I will award it back to you right now. A lot of interesting comments being made. This is a great discussion, regardless of your opinion. I do have a couple questions and a couple of quick comments. I do think that Patrick's comments about retaliation for challenging Salem, challenging in a way, or being interpreted as challenging them, are valid. I think we could see some flack, is a good word for it, by opposing the project. Sure sounds like light rail. Commissioner Savas is with the Milwaukee Light Rail Line, has expressed concerns that while we're generally opposed to the project coming into the county, we don't want to spend a fortune and then have retaliation come our way. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is the Interstate Bridge project, and it was started because there was a traffic problem down there at I-5. The Interstate Bridge is a corridor from Canada to Mexico. There's $850 million in this for light rail. I see no reason why this resolution can't be modified or amended to encourage them to consider other alternatives, to also build a bridge or a crossing that is light rail ready. If you do something that's light rail ready, rather than including light rail at the same time, you're going to save a fortune. The gentleman that just spoke said we're not building anything in the county. Well, our good friends at TriMet told us that light rail was going to get us 14,000 jobs, which of course has been disproven. We certainly need jobs. I'm all for infrastructure, but I really believe that this project certainly involves the county. The lady from the Business Alliance took a poll, and you heard from the business community that they think it affects them, regardless of positive, negative, or however you look at it. I'm opposed to the Columbia River crossing as it currently exists. And if for some reason this resolution is not approved today, I might suggest something that we saw real recently, and at least send a letter of concern, which you've done on the light rail project. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Shop.
Steve Shop, I live in Tualatin, which is in part in Washington County and part in Clackamas County, and I have never worked at Plaid Pantry. You know, I read those letters from the county commission back in 2008 and 2010, and there was deep concerns about the project, the merit of the project. They were looking at the merit of the project, not where the people live coming to speak about it, not challenging a bunch of issues that had nothing to do with the merit, but the merit. So what's happened since 2008 and 2010? The merit's been exposed in every conceivable angle to be the worst project imaginable. So if you can't stand up and at least be counted on the worst regional project in history, what does that tell you about the system here? You shouldn't even take it up? There's a cone of silence? There's a gag order? Really? Is that how it works? The big squeeze? Powerful forces coming down on you, calling you up, emailing you and say, look, you better toe the line, get this off the agenda, or we're going to punish you with your Sunrise Corridor, county resources, and so forth. What does JPAC have to say about that? Well, of course, they have a legislative agenda as well, supporting the CRC. Ann Leininger, commissioner, was on JPAC when they wrote this thing recently, and they support the CRC. And what do they say about the Sunrise Corridor, the Lawnfield project? They have conditions of approval. It says that recipient jurisdiction will cooperate to facilitate the efficient implementation of regional projects. Does it say support regional projects, or does it say the efficient implementation of regional projects? Because if you're not looking at the merit of the project, then you can't tell whether it's efficient or not, can you? All you're looking at is the muscle being squeezed upon you down in Salem. Spending $170 million in planning is the opposite of efficient. You should feel obligated, everyone in the region, every elected official, to do exactly what this county board of county commissioners is doing and stand up and be counted. What is the fear of being counted? And really, when it gets down to it, jobs, well, we're talking billions of dollars here that are going to be, if you had a pile of gold bars in the basement of the Capitol, in what imaginary crazy world would the CRC leap to the head of the line among all the other projects in the state and this county? It's just absurd. Is there no project that can be so bad that it doesn't get support? So the jobs that guys would have back there, the money would be spent on other projects. Maybe this Sunrise Corridor could actually, if you fought the battle and stood up, instead of withering under the powerful forces being thrust upon you, the county and the state would be better off. So I say stand up, be counted, and do the right thing.
Thank you. The last speaker I have is Nancy Hall.
Best for last. I have heard over and over again officials refusing to consider any design of the CRC bridge without light rail as a component. This leads me to believe that it's not about the bridge, it's about pushing the light rail agenda into Clark County. I attended a CRC meeting at Jansen Beach a while back. At that meeting, I learned, contrary to what many in the public believe, that the plan is to toll both the new bridge and the I-205 bridge simultaneously into infinity. This is another reason why government officials want this bridge. The tolls are a new tax revenue for them to spend and also a way to control citizens' driving habits. I say it's another raid on my wallet and a trespass on my liberty. The simple truth is we don't need this bridge at this time and we can't afford this bridge at this time. Please help stop the runaway spending. It appears to me that the citizens of Clark County are valiantly fighting not to be railroaded by light rail, just like the people of Clackamas County. Clackamas County needs to stand in solidarity with Clark County. Vote no on this bridge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Ludlow, just one comment. For the record, I do want to let folks know that the Association of Oregon Counties supports the Columbia River crossing. So they do, and they have been consistent in that, and they are working down in the legislature to help craft the conversation. So.
Any clarifying, well, it's not much of a staff presentation, no offense to Mr. Chandler, but there wasn't much there. So what are the wishes of the commission?
Mr. Chair?
I just add a statement here before we get to you. Yes.
Yeah, well,
Ms.
thank
Smith.
you, and I want to thank everybody for the comments. I love the work of men standing in the back. Hopefully you didn't have to take a day off work to sacrifice to come and be heard. I really appreciate you. Thank you for coming. You're all laid off. Well, I apologize for that. Hopefully we can remedy that. It was very clear to me why I was elected, and I was elected to do this, is to listen to the people, gather facts and information, correlate them, and then present something. And part of my campaign, and one of the campaign promises that I made was to stop overbearing government from trampling on our rights and taking away, in essence, our financial freedom through transportation. Now, there's been comments made that this is a Multnomah County project. Well, you know it's not a Multnomah County project. It's being funded by the federal government. We are all part of the federal government, and in tune, we're being asked by the citizens of the entire state of Oregon to pay through this through bonding, so therefore it is a state project. And to say Clackamas County has no business doing it, I submit to you, you people have never been more wrong. Now, let me finish. We don't need applause. Thank you. We don't need applause. I'm a lifelong Clackamas County resident and fourth generation. Nobody loves this county or this state more or longer, probably in this room, than I have. I have years and years of political experience dating back to 30 years, and yes, I started very young. This entire project is a mess. We have already spent $160 million and have scarce little to show for it. If that doesn't tell you how this project is progressing, I don't know what will. They want to toll the bridge, but they won't toll I-205 bridge. If you people understand geography, and I know you do because everyone in this room is intelligent, 3/4 of I-205 runs through Clackamas County. If you do not toll I-205, there will be traffic backups till heck won't have it, and your 20-minute commute or your 40-minute commute just turned into a 2-hour commute. I'm not finished. This bridge has a design of light rail. Clackamas County has said time and time again, they do not want light rail, and I suspect other areas in the region will follow suit. This was made to alleviate a bottleneck. Well, we've heard from a very good forensic accountant who testified today on her own volition and is not paid by anybody. She just has an interest to say that the traffic projections are totally wrong. And they've been wrong on the other two bridges. And I'm going to read some things from her, and I want to enlighten my colleague and friend, Commissioner Schrader, in when it comes to accounting, as my daughter will tell me, because she will graduate in accounting from a very private, prestigious liberal arts college, Mom, accounting is accounting. If you can count apples, you can also likewise count oranges. Therefore, I take this accountant to be credible. And she has identified some pork projects in this, and I'm going to take the time to read them, because I've been very quiet up to this point on commenting on people's testimony. We have $250 million to $300 million for the Portland Steel Bridge improvements embedded in this project. We have $5 million to $6.8 million for the Hood River Channel restoration, which is 60 miles east, and I have a feeling that's in the city of Hood River or nearby. $7.2 million to $10 million for a bike pedestrian bridge from Hayden Island to the CRC. And by the way, bike people don't pay any fees. $37 million to $51 million for the Ruby Junction in Gresham, again, Multnomah County. $6.2 million to $8.5 million for yet another bike pedestrian ramp to the Vancouver waterfront. $7.5 million to $10 million for a museum. Little to do with transportation. $11 million to $15 million for the Lewis River confluence. That means they want to clean up the Lewis River. That is sited 20 miles north of us in Woodland. $2 million for administrative office for TriMet. $25 million to $35 million for a lid over a section of the freeway. Does that mean a roof? I'm not quite sure. This is why I am opposing this. I submit to you, I submit to everyone in this room, this will be drain on further transportation projects in Clackamas County. We have 16 cities in this county that are screaming for transportation dollars to fix their potholed streets, and we are unable to do that. We are unable to adequately maintain our 1,800 miles of road in Clackamas County, and I would submit to ODOT, the federal, and the state legislature, of which I used to be a member, that Clackamas County is more responsible for more roads than even ODOT can handle on a statewide basis. So quit taking money out of our pockets, putting it into something that has been very much propelled by crony capitalism and special interests in this state. And yes, I will oppose this with my dying breath. I have been elected to fight government. I have been elected to fight crony capitalists who are dishonest with the people's money. Thank you very much.
Chair, could I just ask?
Commissioner Savas wanted to be recognized first, and then you.
I want to thank everyone who's came here today and testified, and I'm sorry that I wasn't able to hear all the testimony, and I will play back the whole tape. With all respect to my colleagues, this came about rather quickly, and this is not a situation where staff is to blame, but normally, I think I heard it on the Housing Authority. I've heard it on a lot of different agenda items before us that we need to do our homework and we need to study. And in this case, unique from the Housing Authority, there was no deadline. There was no guaranteed maximum price deadline that we had to meet. So we have time. We have time to actually study this and do a lot of what you all folks recommended, and that's to do our homework. I have been inundated with a lot of material, And I think that I've been elected to do my homework and study this matter. And I'm not here just to say no to everything or yes to everything. I'm here to make a recommendation. If I think it needs to be tweaked, let's tweak it. If we see a wrong, let's make a suggestion and make it right. So, you know, I'm gonna, that's who I am. It's who I'm gonna be. And I want this studied. No fault on staff, but we've got a lot of work. We have an excellent Department of Transportation head that worked for ODOT. We've had a lot of good testimony that I would possibly even like to talk with some of you who came here today. I've never met you before, but to go over some of this material. Mr. Edgar spoke earlier. I met with him yesterday, brought a lot of material forward. But, you know, frankly, there's a lot of material here, and I'm going to do my homework. So, and I also think, as I said earlier before I had to leave for a bit, that I think the significance of this, and you're clearly saying it's a significant project. I agree with Commissioner Smith that this does affect us financially. I mean, it does stand a chance to direct funding seriously, maybe for 20 years maybe. And I think that's a concern that we need to study. That's why we asked the state treasurer. We have an invitation from the state treasurer to explain that finance piece to us. We've asked ODOT, and I think they'll comply or oblige us and come and give us all the details and balance that with all this other material. I think that's the responsible thing to do. That's our job. That's staff's job. That's what we're here to do. But absent no work session and no preparation for this, you know, this is not our process. Our process is, you know, we bring something forth, we have a work session, staff does their homework, they prepare it, and they bring us as good of advice. So, you know, we gotta be consistent here, folks. We have to be consistent.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to thank you for that, Commissioner Savas, because that was my point earlier that I made, that we did not follow our normal process when we put this on the agenda, and it has not been discussed as part of our legislative agenda for the state of Oregon. I did have an opportunity, just to let my colleagues know, to speak with Senator Beyer. I'm in contact with Senator Starr, and they are the gentlemen who are on the committee that is working on pulling this piece together. I served with Senator Starr specifically on business and transportation in the state Senate, where a lot of the questions we had here were actually brought up. And I am very happy that he, as a colleague of mine in the Senate, is working on this issue, because I trust his judgment as a conservative person to make sure all these needs are addressed. The reason I have always been in support of the Columbia River crossing is very simple from my point of view. It's about jobs, and it's about the movement of freight and services. And we have a number of folks in the back there who are unemployed. That's a shame. This kind of a project that government can do can give those folks a living wage job where their families can be fed and they can be healthy and pay for their homes and everything else that they need to do as citizens in this county. So I am not going to abandon those folks, and I'm not going to abandon those jobs, because it is about job creation. And let me be very clear, folks, there is a lot of support out there, not just from regular folk. We have some of the biggest businesses in the state who see it as critical to the financial health of the state and the financial health of all of us around here to make sure that we have an adequate bridge across that river to increase capacity. It's about transit, it's about moving ahead, it's about getting stuff in trucks and back and forth, not just for this region, but we're talking along the entire I-5 corridor. This is a critical component of making sure that that corridor stays open so we can be economically viable. I did talk to Senator Beyer last night. He said that this is he's chair of Business and Transportation right now in the Senate, and he said this particular project has had the most oversight of any project in the history of the state of Oregon. I have not talked to Senator Starr. I suspect that he will say the same thing. I am going to support the Columbia River Corridor. I'm not going to change my mind. I will certainly look at all the information to discuss. And I would also say to my colleagues that if you want to bring this forward, please do it in an appropriate way where we have the discussion. Finally, I'd like to say anyone can come to our work sessions. As far as I'm concerned, if anyone wants to come and speak, that's fine with me. whether or not they're from Clackamas County or not. And the last clarification I'd like to make is this. I do remember those letters we sent, and the reason we sent them, we were concerned about tolling on the I-205 corridor, and we were concerned about tolling on the bridge, and that was what that was about. It was not a lack of support for the Columbia River crossing. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair?
Yeah, I want to, well, now, we're going to make comments, we're going to make a motion. Each one of you have had a piece to say, and I'm going to reserve that right for me to do that this particular time, and then whatever after that. We can discuss this, we can put a motion on the floor, whatever. Look, I did talk with the state senator last night, too. And actually, he was in favor of, not of this resolution, but of course, the bill. He's a man whom I respect. And the thing I asked him is, because we certainly heard Mr. Sheehan's testimony, about consequences and retaliation and retribution. That's a sad day when we have to run from threats, from blackmail. It's very sad, and it's not the first time I've heard it, in this county or, even when I wasn't in this position. There's always some kind of payback on the horizon. You better not do this. Now, Aristotle's got a great statement. I've lived by it. To avoid criticism, do nothing, say nothing, be nothing. And so the point of the matter is here, the great traffic movement. If you take that great traffic movement from this proposed bridge, tell me about the Rose Quarter. Tell me about that area for trucks. Tell me if you've never joined there off of Broadway, swung around, and you're going to go south, and there are trucks coming down there who do want to take Highway 84, Interstate 84, who do want to go to Milwaukee, and tell me how that's going to be improved by this project. We are not allowed to toll I-205 because the feds say we cannot do that. And as has been previously expressed, if you're not going to toll 205 and you're going to toll I-5, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out which way they're going to go. They're going to go 205, and whatever surplus we ever thought we had out there on 205, which we don't from the bottleneck known as Stafford all the way to the bridge, is way gone, folks. Way gone for decades. And the toll, certainly traffic will definitely move better through the Rose Quarter and across this new bridge. But take a look as it passes, as I-205 passes through Clackamas County. It's going to be devastating. Now, we can practice paralysis by analysis and study and study and study. Gosh, we'll do exactly what they did when they burnt through $170 million and got the height wrong. So, sure, we can delay this. And, maybe the best fix for this is, and this has always been fearful with the government, is why don't we just send it to the voters of Clackamas County and see what they think? Well, they don't want that. That's not germane. That's not something they need to do. This county and the county's government and others have fought the vote every time. They fought the vote through a referendum on the Selwood Bridge. They fought the vote on urban renewal, and they fought the vote on light rail. Why? Because we don't need to hear from those people. They're just the taxpayers. And they're probably not informed enough to really make a germane decision on this. So I'm disappointed in some ways with some of the testimony, but I accept it. And I accept that everybody has the best intentions. And with regards to putting people back to work, it is not the government's job to create government work, construction work, to put people back to work. I think it's our job. Our job is to create the environment where private investment would occur that would drive those jobs. We cannot continue to lean on government to create construction jobs. So there's my point of the day.
Chair Ludlow, I just got to say one point. Remember, Chair Ludlow, with all due respect, that private companies support this project, and they are the job creators, and I think that needs to be said. And then I do have a question for Commissioner Smith. With this information, with a forensic audit, could you explain to me, a forensic audit, does that imply malfeasance of some kind? Can somebody give me a definition of a forensic audit? Because I hadn't seen that material
No,
before.
I think we should we'll discuss that later. We're running long. I have an appointment. several of us have an appointment. Let's get down to the business, since there's going to be more discussion on this
Oh,
later.
yeah,
Mr. Dresser.
and my concern as well.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I move that we approve the resolution opposing the current design of the Columbia River crossing.
Is there a second? I'll second the motion. And now, discussion on the motion. Let's keep it to the motion, shall we? And you're welcome to talk, of course, commissioners, about whatever they will, but
Oh, thank you for that, Chair, because the only other question I have is with this information we received from Vancouver, if other commissioners had seen it before, because this is the first time I've seen it, and I'm just curious, is it something that you got today?
I have seen this before. Tiffany Couch has been kind
Okay,
enough.
I just wanted to know.
To put her forensic audit online for anybody to view.
And it's online, that's where I got my information on yesterday about the enormous amount of pork that has nothing to do with this bridge crossing.
So you did have an opportunity to review this information ahead of time with the knowledge that was going to be presented here today. Thank you, just wanted to clarify
There's
that.
no way I can go through all of it. It's very, she put a lot online. Mr. Savas.
I just want to say again that, you know, a lot of information has come forth. I can't blame staff. I saw that a couple of our speakers brought some letters from the county. I'm aware of the position of the county, but I haven't even seen the letters. I mean, I don't, the letters that Mr. Winters and brought forth about the 2008 letter, and I don't dispute that. I'm aware that we took a position on the 205 because we knew it would be impacted. That's a fact.
The letter was
Yeah,
about that,
and that's been a
Commissioner
longstanding
Savas.
position of the county that, you know, hey, if you're going to move on the CRC and you're going to toll the CRC, then please toll or find a way to toll 205. And I believe that. I believe that's going to be an issue. So frankly, as I said again, I'm not ready to make an uninformed decision. And there's no time-sensitive issue that says, you know what, we need to make this decision now. There's nothing. I am not going to sit here and make an uninformed decision of this magnitude, period. So I will be abstaining.
Thank you. Any more clarifications or comments? You're welcome to do that at time, Commission. Be it known that the motion was made by Commissioner Smith and seconded by Commissioner Ludlow. If not, we'll ask the clerk to take the roll.
Okay, Commissioner Smith?
Yes?
Commissioner Savas?
Abstain?
Commissioner Schrader?
No?
Chair Ludlow?
Yes, it does not pass. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get to the consent agenda. The clerk will now read the consent agenda by title.
I got it.
Again, I want to thank everybody who came out on this last issue for waiting and everything, everybody that testified, no matter what they said, okay? Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's really short. Okay, the consent agenda.
Yes.
Under Health, Housing, and Human Services, we have approval to submit the 2012-2013 Local Public Health Authority Plan Update to the State of Oregon Public Health Division. Under also approval of a group provider agreement with HealthNet Health Plan of Oregon for primary care services. Under elected officials, approval of previous business meeting minutes. Under the Department of Emergency Management, approval of the fiscal year 2011 Urban Area Securities Initiative Local Grant Agreement with Clackamas Fire District Number 1, Clackamas River Water District, and Sunrise Water Authority. And under the Water Environment Services, approval for purchase of a replacement tractor and installation of existing tanks for Clackamas County Service District Number 1, and that concludes the consent agenda.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Schrader, seconded by Commissioner Smith. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Chair Ludlow?
Yes. And now it's time for County Administrator update.
Actually, I'll keep my update very brief. That concludes it.
Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. And now we'll ask the commissioners, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Communication.
I have nothing else to say. I need to go.
Frankly, I need to go too, but Commissioner Savas?
In the interest of time, no comment.
No comment. Here we go.
It's a consensus. No comment from me. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. This meeting is adjourned.